Everybody ready? I'd like to call this meeting to order. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. This is Pledge Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commend everyone not kneeling. All right. Any changes to consent agenda? Actually, I'd like to move the discussion. Which one was that, Elizabeth? On the the wetland. Oh well, we'll just keep it separate.
We have the presentations. I'm just looking at my
yeah.
Number. So consent agenda is going to be from 3 to 3, 4, 5, 6. The numbers got messed up here. I got 2, 1, and 2s. 3 to 6.
Who 1 and 2s? On the original one or on the modified one?
Modified one.
Okay. Well, a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any subtractions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, first up we have the presentation from Rice Creek Watershed. My glasses just broke.
It's, actually, Anoka Conservation District is going to do the first one, and Joe is here this evening, and Rice Creek Watershed District will follow him.
Okay. Yeah, that's equipment failure.
Can people speak into the mics?
Yeah, could you just twist that mic around? That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Sorry if I look towards the presentation for most of it, but thank you guys for having me. I guess I wasn't entirely sure what to be prepared with, so I came with kind of a general overview of the buffer law and requirements, what we do as an SWCD, and then if you guys have additional questions after that, then I'll kind of just be here to answer.
Okay.
So, all right, so the buffer law, that's not officially what it's called. It's Minnesota Statute 103F.48. But it was signed into law June of 2015 as part of Governor Dayton's kind of big push to clean up the waters of the state. It's gone through a number of amendments. So the first round of amendments in 2016 kind of clarified the roles of local government units. It focused jurisdiction only over public ditches and public waters. Originally, all waterways were part of the law. And then it also kind of laid out the mechanisms for penalties. And then in 2017, the most recent updates during the 2017 legislative session included an extension for public waters for the deadline on that. And then it provided funding for local enforcement. And it also now requires all seed mixes that will be planted for buffers to be certified by MDA as being free of noxious weeds, particularly Palmer amaranth. And I'm actually still kind of working with Bowser on that one to figure out how landowners can make sure that their seeds are certified. So some of the, I guess the biggest requirements, public waterways need a 50-foot average with a 30-foot minimum perennially rooted vegetated buffer by November 1st of 2017. So that's coming up here pretty shortly. But there is a possibility for an extension on those ones for July 1st of 2018. And since these rules have been kind of rolling out as a process, Bowser has to take all the new legislative language, try to interpret it, and then create guidance for that. And so the process has really kind of been pushing into these deadlines. And so I've kind of been just assuring folks that this extension's out there, and I've been pretty freely making it known that you'll be able to get the extension. Everything will be fine. Public ditches need a 16.5-foot buffer in place by November 1st of 2018. And DNR, their role in all of this was to produce and manage the official map of all the buffer requirements. And I have a slide later on that shows that map, for Anoka County at least. Local drainage authorities, so within Anoka County, that would be the county itself, Rice Creek Watershed District, and Coon Creek Watershed District, may choose to enforce the buffer rules. If local enforcement is turned down, then Bowser fills in as the enforcement agency anywhere in the state that occurs. And then SWCDs, so that's who I would be here representing, we monitor, assist with, and report on buffers within the county. So that role is kind of laid out in statute. Just what is a buffer in general, in case anyone is wondering on that. It's an area consisting of perennial vegetation, excluding invasive plants and noxious weeds, adjacent to all bodies of water within the state, and that protects the water resources of the state from runoff pollution, stabilizes the soils, shores, and banks, and protects or provides riparian corridors. So that's right out of the definition section of the law. Compliance for the buffer law is determined on a per parcel basis. So a lot of people haven't been aware of this. It's not per waterway or looking at, the ditch as a whole. It truly is a per parcel by parcel evaluation of all the required buffers. So I have a couple examples on there. Parcel B would be considered compliant because there would be buffers present along every segment of the waterway there. Parcel C, even though they kind of have 4 segments there that need buffers, and 3 of them look like they're in place, the 4th one would not be on the north end there, so then that parcel as a whole would not be considered compliant. Okay. So how you measure buffers. In general, the buffers are measured from the top of the top of the bank or the crown of the bank outward. So this is the case on pretty much all the public ditches, a lot of the public waterways, the streams, creeks, things like that have definable banks. So that's the easiest way to measure them. Where there's a definable bank, you measure outward from the top of that. And then the definition or the guidance language from Bowser on that is the first major change in slope of the incline above a clearly defined channel. Where there is no definable bank, and this is the case on a lot of wetlands, the buffers are to be measured outward from the normal water level. So you determine that normal water level as the level evidenced by the long-term presence of surface water as indicated directly by hydrophytic plants or hydric soils, or indirectly determined by hydrological models or analyses. They kind of have a little picture. That would be the lower one on the bottom there. So usually you would use the plants and the soils to determine where there's usually standing water, and then you would measure outward from there. Okay. So the intended effects of the buffer law, basically the buffers are to act as giant filter strips. They slow overland runoff during storm events, allowing the sediment to settle out within the buffer. They allow phosphorus bound to that sediment to remain available for use by the buffer vegetation rather than flowing downstream. They allow nitrates and dissolved phosphorus to soak into soil, where again they'd be available for uptake by the buffer vegetation rather than washing downstream. They allow less of the water to immediately enter the stream and ditch, reducing the flashiness of the system as a whole. That's how quickly water rises and then falls back again in the whole system. They reduce the direct application of fertilizers and pesticides into the waterway by kind of offsetting the equipment from running right next to the water, because there'd be the buffer in between there. But still, private ditches have no protection or no additional protection, and they flow to all the same places, provide the same water quality benefits as public ditches would. Drain tiles in certain areas route water under the buffer, kind of undermining the benefit of it. They just everything drains from the field, flows under the buffer right into the waterway as before. 16.5 feet was not originally the desired width for the public ditches. So it was 30 feet, and 30 feet has been shown to be a much more effective BMP at removing sediment. That's the best management practice. And then 50 feet in research has been shown to effectively remove dissolved chemicals. So the Anoka Conservation District's role in all of this, the SWCD role in statute is really kind of a technical assistance role while working with landowners, and then a monitoring and reporting role when working with enforcement agencies. So the SWCD is not an enforcement agency whatsoever in terms of the buffer law. So what we do as far as technical assistance, we measure and stake out buffers for landowners. We kind of act as the go-to contact within the county on the buffer law in general. We direct landowners towards cost share opportunities, help with alternative practices where they may be applicable. That can be an alternate practice where that may work better than a buffer in certain scenarios. And then also offer guidance on things like buffer planting, things like that. For monitoring and reporting, we monitor the whole county for the presence of buffers along all the required waterways, send out notifications on upcoming deadlines, activities, potential violations. We report the status of buffers within the county to the drainage authorities and Bowser, and then we also maintain a local map and inventory of all the buffers in the county. So kind of where we're at in this whole process now, I guess, have sent letters to 55 landowners so far within the county that are at risk of not complying with the provisions of the buffer law currently. I've either worked with or are currently in the process of working with 22 of them. So far it's been going really well. We are offering cost share funding. So that was part of the 2017 legislative update, was to give cost share funding to SWCDs to pass through to landowners. Our board approved the maximum rate on that, which was $300 per acre. Now, when you look at a public ditch that requires 16.5 feet of buffer, if the whole 16.5 feet is cost shared, it takes a half a mile to get 1 acre out of 16.5 feet. So we're essentially cost sharing public ditches at a rate of $300 per half mile. It hasn't been an extremely popular program yet. Rice Creek Watershed District, however, in that portion of the county is offering a much higher cost share rate. They have their own cost share program going. And so with the state money too, there's really strict restrictions on, you can only use the money on the buffer that's not currently in place and that only reaches the minimum to comply with the law. Where Rice Creek is offering, or it's my understanding that they're actually cost sharing required buffers, but additionally effective buffers if landowners want to go above and beyond that at a much higher rate. So on the enforcement side of things, the county itself has elected for enforcement countywide over all of the waters. And so they're still in the process of drafting that ordinance as of last night at like 7:30. I emailed Doug Fisher. So I wish I could bring the ordinance to you guys, but it's not done yet. The watershed districts, those being Coon Creek and Rice Creek, may elect enforcement over the ditches or public waters in their boundaries in the future if they so choose. And that, again, the deadline for 50-foot average buffers is coming up here November 1st of this year. And we've been maintaining our inventory of parcels and relaying compliance status to Bowser and the county. This is a map that Bowser came out with that shows current compliance. Sorry, it's pretty small up on the screen. But the takeaway from this is that Anoka County on that map is really dark blue, which means we're over 99% compliant already. And then here's a map of the DNR mapped waterways that would require buffers. So you can see the county boundary on there, and then I have Coon Creek in orange and Rice Creek Watershed District in purple kind of lined out. But the big takeaway from this is anything in green would require a 16.5 foot buffer by November 1st of 2018. Anything in blue needs a 50-foot buffer by this November 1st without a deadline, or without an extension to that deadline. So, okay. And then just some helpful resources within the county. The SWCD is supposed to be the go-to organization, so there's my contact information. Be sure to take that down. If you have any questions tomorrow, next week, next year, just give me an email or a call. I've also been learning as this whole process has been going on, so if I can't answer your question right away, I will forward your question to Bowser and hopefully get you back an answer as soon as possible. That brings me to the next link down. Oop. So that's the bowser.state.mn.us/buffers. That's their main site for all of their guidance on the buffer law. So that would be a really good place to learn more about anything that you might have concerns with, questions about, anything like that. The next link down, the DNR one, that's the official buffer map. And so it's kind of just like Google Maps of the whole state. You just drag it around, zoom in. You can zoom into your land, anyone else's land, all the waterways, and you can see where the buffer required waterways are. And then that last link is the law itself. So that's the official statute language there on the state revisor site. And that's my presentation.
Are you done?
Yes.
All right. So we're hopefully not going to shoot the messenger here, but you'll have a lot of questions tonight. Go ahead.
All right.
What about all the people living on lakes, and beaches and all that?
Yeah, so local shoreland ordinance from direct communication that I've had with Bowser is supposed to take precedent over the buffer law in those scenarios. So as long as the local shoreland ordinances allow for beaches, things like that, which in most cases the beaches are fine, then those lake owners are fine.
That was it.
Okay.
So the buffer, the tractor you showed with the mowing and all that stuff, that's easy to figure out. A lot of people in Columbus have horses. Some have cattle. So what can go in the buffer zone and what can't?
So as far as vegetation or practices?
For instance, yeah, there's some ditches I can think of where there's fence lines that are probably 10 feet from the ditch, mowed between the fence line and the ditch. I mean, now horses and stuff can't be within that 50-foot boundary also?
No, so it just has to maintain 80% ground cover with perennially rooted vegetation.
So grass,
Grass would count, yep.
can it be mowed or not mowed?
Yes, it can be mowed. Can be mowed, hayed, yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you want half my yard, basically. And I use it as a yard, and I'm going to build a house there. So
Okay.
are you going to pay me for that? Or is there any, I mean, $300 an acre is not going to pay for my yard.
Right. So unfortunately, that's all the cost share that we can offer right now to plant
Okay.
the buffers. I cannot provide payment for any land. So the stance that, the state is kind of taking on this is that ownership is remaining yours, and therefore they're not
No,
reimbursing.
it's not. It's a land taking.
anybody. So,
It's a flat out taking of land. So I guess one of the problems I have with this is the wording. And the wording, that anything that government tends to do is really never what it says, like Affordable Health Care Act. It talks about the public waterways. And if you look at the definition of a public waterway in subchapter 15A in your 1003G.005, it says that 10 acres or more in an unincorporated area. Bill, we're all incorporated area here, right?
Correct.
So in an unincorporated area, it's 10 acres or more. In an incorporated area, it's 2.5 acres or more. So anybody that has a 2.5 acre wetland is now a public waterway. It's totally enclosed on their 80 acres or on their 40 acres, and you now have created a public waterways on private property with a 2.5 acre type 3, 4, or 5 wetland. Is that correct?
So all of the waterways that would need buffers would be on that official DNR map. And all I do is monitor the county based on that map, because
That's
that's
not
the
what it
official map.
It says here under the definition of public waterways and wetlands.
So the DNR created their map from the public water inventories, a lot of which were done like back in the 80s. And then they also worked with the local governments like counties, all of the different drainage authorities, and got the ditch maps, waterway maps from them. But DNR is the official word on that map. And the map that they post online is the map that we have to, by law, monitor for buffers on.
So what's the process for getting opted out of that or saying that?
So DNR has gone through a number of updates, and as an SWCD, we have a link on a website where we can put comments and kind of draw on the map, and then DNR looks at our comments, determines if they think they're valid. Usually they ignore them and leave the map as it is. They have made some small changes throughout the state, but very few.
So what's your impression of the 2.5 acre in an incorporated area? Is it,
Well, so that wetland wouldn't necessarily be on the map if it wasn't on the original public water inventories from the 80s. If it made it on those original public water inventories, then it's probably on the DNR map. If not, then there's a good chance that it's not on the DNR map, because there are wetlands that are not on
Just
it.
for clarification, when you're talking about public waterways, those are the wetlands that have marked with Ps? Are those protected waterways?
can you go back to that screen?
Yeah, so it would, in the most basic sense, be everything in blue on DNR's map.
So, significant piece of Columbus.
It's kind of hard to see where we're at on there.
It is. I believe my house is in there.
The very large blue blob is a lot of the wetlands within Carlos Avery.
Oops. Okay. So, help me out here. If a wetland, the size of a wetland, is it determined by the size that's on the parcel of property or the size on the aggregate landowner's property? So if 5 people border a 10-acre wetland,
Right.
and that goes partway into that, do you just take the area that is on your property and that's the size of your wetland, or is it the fact that it's this big, huge blob?
So you would go off of the normal water level around the edges of that entire wetland. So if your parcel butted up to that normal water level, then you would be required to put the buffer outward within your parcel from that normal water level. It doesn't really matter if the parcel lines divide the wetland in any sort of certain way. There just needs to be buffer present along the entire perimeter of the wetland.
I got your phone number. You wouldn't mind if I give you a call? Because
Sure,
I have some
yeah.
other questions. I'll probably bore all these
Yep.
people here, but
That's perfect.
in general, I think it's a real problem. And when this gets overturned, what will happen?
What?
Just shut it off again? I mean,
So right now, all of the duties that we're performing are
mandated?
mandated by this law.
Sure.
And so if we're no longer mandated to do anything, then
And who's paying for it?
paying for which portion of it?
Your office, your copy machine, all your staff? I mean,
So we get a small amount of funding from Bowser, passed through from the state, for doing all of our monitoring and stuff. The county and any local drainage authority who takes on enforcement gets a larger sum for doing the enforcement responsibility side of
So
it.
You're the ditch authority in Anoka?
No.
Race Creek is, and
Rice Creek would be the ditch authority within their watershed.
yeah.
So far, they have not taken on enforcement authority for any of the provisions of the buffer law. So the county right now is acting as enforcement for all of the county.
I see. Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other questions?
What triggers this buffer law? Is it development, or is it it's just goes into effect and everyone has to abide by it regardless?
Essentially, so the waters are published with deadlines that say when they need to have vegetated boundaries, and that's how it applies statewide.
So for citizens in Columbus, how would they know, how would they even know about this? How would they even know there's a buffer law or whether they're in violation or need to do something?
So I have sent out notification letters that include maps and things like that as part of my kind of countywide inventory that I did to landowners. And I'm trying my best to prepare everybody ahead of the deadlines, because it's my ultimate goal that no enforcement action is ever taken on this. Obviously, there are many people that aren't happy about having to put the buffers in, but I would rather work with people to get them in than eventually see enforcement action. So yeah, as far as advertisement aside from that, I guess it's been in the news some. It's kind of been the talk of the town, I guess, for lack of a better phrase for it, for a couple of years now. And really, for more information, I would stress to anybody throughout the county to call our office, heck, even call Bowser, call your representative, whoever you want about it. So
I suppose I'm gonna add, this map, we could get this map with roads and stuff so we can figure out where we're at, right? Because I got some I personally had an incident with digging a pond at Bowser and DNR, and I had to hire an attorney.
Sure.
And they claimed I was in this great big waterway thing, which after I hired an attorney, they backed off. It wasn't a public waterway, and it isn't. So who determines whether or not it's in it? Because all the water's gonna get to the public waterway sooner or later. It all
Right.
flows. We've seen that. We live in Columbus. I mean, who determined that? And then the other thing is, all these farmers, all this property is gonna go out of production now. And they count every penny they can to make it through. And instead of putting maybe some mounding or something along the ditches like they do in Columbus when they clear them out, so when the water comes up, it has to actually run through to get to the ditch. They're stealing property from the farmers. So I wonder how they're getting reimbursed for this.
So the first part, where it comes from, who determines the public water state, the DNR. So they make the map, maintain the map, and it's always at that site. The easiest, I put the actual www
Actually,
on
I
there.
found I'm on here and I found
Okay.
it. But the question is Bill, you and I are not on this map, even though I have 13 acres of wetland. That's
Sure.
what I'm talking about. But I can see there's lots of people who are going to be upset about this map.
So even
And-
though I've got a public ditch that runs across.
You're not in the blue area here, and neither am I. So when we go to the Rice Creek watershed to get a permit to put our house or our accessory building, wherever we're gonna put it, they're gonna go, oh, no, you don't have to do that, and then we're good. Is that what you're saying?
So the DNR buffer map waters would not apply to any of the Wetland Conservation Act rules as far as development or altering a wetland, things like that.
Well, no, I understand that, but are they gonna say, because you're bordering 13 acres of wetlands, now the buffer law kicks in for you?
Not if it is not on the DNR
Okay.
map, no.
That's my question. Okay. All right.
And then your second question about being reimbursed, as far as I know right now, other than cost share for planting the buffers, there's no actual form of reimbursement available. And the stance that I have heard Bowser take on this is that ownership of the land remains in your name, not the state's name.
So, and not that I'm starting to try anything, but if you were a farmer and you own 8,000 acres, and you've got to all of a sudden suck up 50 feet along all these things, everybody say, oh, that's great, you're protecting the waterways, but that's their livelihood. I would think financially for some farmers, it's gonna be a big kick in the teeth, so.
I'd like to see the proof that it does anything, but, all right. Any other questions, guys? Dennis? Hey, thanks for presenting it.
Yeah,
Good
thank
job.
you guys for having me.
Yeah.
It really helps me I'm glad I got invited because, I don't know which of these things I
Yep.
should go to and invite myself to. So it actually helps me when I get invited to things like that.
Yeah.
And I can get the word out and get kind of a consistent message out. So,
Yeah,
yeah, thank you guys for having me. Feel free to contact me anytime. So,
I will. Thank you.
all right.
Yep. All right, moving on. We have a presentation from, who's up next here? The Rice Creek Watershed Ditch Authority. How you doing?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Administrator Mersko, and staff. Thank you so much for having us, inviting us. My name is Phil Belfiore. I'm the administrator with Rice Creek Watershed District. You'll see up here on the slide, we're here to talk about a very exciting large-scale project that we just wrapped up in your city, which happens to be the largest public drainage project we've done in the history of Rice Creek Watershed District, and we just got it done here at the City of Columbus. And we're very excited to talk to you about it. First, I want to introduce some of the managers here that are here tonight. Manager Preiner and Wagaman are here. They are two managers that are both representative to Anoka County on our 5-member Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers. There's 5 managers altogether, 2 from Anoka, 2 from Ramsey, and 1 from Washington. Both of the Anoka County managers are residents of your fine city. Also have staff, myself, administrator, and then Tom Schmidt, who's our public drainage inspector here, to answer any specific questions you might have after the presentation. We also have our 2 engineers who did the work here, Chris and Garrett from Houston Engineering, who are the ones that designed it, and they'll be talking to you shortly. I wanted to really thank you as leaders working in partnership with the Rice Creek Watershed District on development of this project. It was a long 2 or 3 year long lengthy process, lots of regulation, lots of planning, lots of discussions with your staff, and lots of public involvement and public meetings, of which we had all of them right here in this room. And I wanted to thank you for all that and your continued partnership. Also wanted to thank Jim and Elizabeth here on your staff. They were great to work with from the first day on this very complex, large-scale project, so I wanted to thank you for that as well. And I also wanted to thank Vite, who did the work, who was our contractor. This was a very, they did a very fast-paced job for doing the amount of length of miles of public linear ditch work that they did up there, and I wanted to thank them for that. So, really, this is, like I said, this is the largest project that the Rice Creek Watershed District public drainage repair project we've ever done. Not only, and that's from the miles that we've done. Actually, 10% of the entire public linear miles of ditch were repaired in one project in our entire watershed, which was right here on Anoka County Ditch 3146, which is the project we're talking about. And not only that, but we got most of these public drainage systems, many of them were almost not draining at all. They were barely flowing water in many cases. And sometimes they would only flow if it rained really heavy. Otherwise, it would look something like this. And what we did, and we actually have an exciting drone that we can show you before, during, and after footage of what we did. It went from this, next slide please, to this. That's the same exact spot. And that's not atypical. That's in many portions of the drainage system what it looks like now. So we transformed what I call, oftentimes a deer path drainage system, which looked like a deer path, to something which actually has some flow, is going to pass storm events, it's going to pass the drainage system continually and move things along for the residents of this area. And so we're very proud of that, and we are very excited to get the invitation to come and talk to you about this tonight. Next slide, please. Okay, so Rice Creek Watershed District is watershed district that has 28 cities and 4 counties. We're very big. We have 186 square miles. We have 120 linear miles of public drainage system that we manage on behalf of the landowners. We're not the owners of the drainage system. We manage and repair, in this case, repair the drainage system on behalf of the landowners of this watershed, and obviously many of them are residents of the city of Columbus in this case for the project we're talking about. We really focus on this board of managers, this suite of managers that we've had at Rice Creek for about 8 or 9 years. Their number one priority is to protect the landowners' rights for public drainage projects. They've undertaken in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, they've undertaken the only comprehensive drainage repair projects in the 43-year history of Rice Creek. Every single one of them has taken place in the last 7 or 8 years. And also they do additional work that we're not going to talk about, but we do a lot of additional work related to water quality and flood control and regulatory programs as well. So here's where we're talking about just this box. So it's a fairly small area within the overall watershed district, but very critical because both of these drainage systems are very lengthy. They provide a lot of a very important benefit to the landowners of City of Columbus and Rice Creek Watershed District. And like I said, this is approximately 10% of the area that we've developed, 10% of the overall ditch miles that we manage at a public drainage perspective were repaired in a comprehensive way with one project. Next slide, please. Okay, so why do we maintain public drainage systems? It's really a predictable drainage is what the key thing is. Landowners, no matter if you're a horse farmer, if you're a row crop farmer, if you're someone that looks for development or is thinking about it, the most important thing, as you all know as residents of this area, is that you want to understand what the water is going to do when it rains. How high is it going to go? How is it going to impact some of my property? The predictability of drainage is critical, and that's one of the main reasons we do these systems, is so those landowners and the folks that work with them, like at the city, understand the predictability of that drainage and that stormwater management going forward. It also fulfills the Drainage Authority's responsibility that's required by law. And that's something that the Board of Managers takes very seriously. And also, it's important to know that not only are we going to repair these systems, but we have an ongoing and comprehensive, very robust system of ongoing maintenance. So that once we spend the money, it does cost a lot to repair these, but once we spend it, we want to make sure we have the maintenance corridors, we have the staff, we have the know-how to make sure we keep the system running how it currently is now, not the way, and don't let it regress back to the way it was before we got to the repair. And so we have a very comprehensive program. Tom is a full-time person that works on that for all the drainage systems as well. Next slide. Okay, so something also very exciting in the city of Columbus is that we actually have 4 of the 5 drainage systems that we've done comprehensive repairs on in the last 6 or 7 years. 4 of the 5 are within the city of Columbus, even though you're only one of 28 cities in our watershed district. 4 of the 5 comprehensive drainage projects are in the city of Columbus. In 2012, we completed work on Judicial Ditch 4, which is over by the Freeway District, as you call it. See the red light there? That was completed. Also, you worked with us, and it was very instrumental. Not only did we work on multiple public drainage repair programs in that area, but we also worked on a wetland bank that we've worked with you on, that we continue to partner with you and some of the landowners in this city on to developing, that will allow us to build other repair systems more efficiently as well. And then the next year, on the southern part of the boundary there, is Anoka County Ditch 102232. And again, the headwaters of that ditch system were in the city of Columbus, and we've done multiple iterations of work in that public drainage system as well. And then in 16 and 17, the one we're here to talk to you about tonight is Anoka County Ditch 3146, as you can see here in the map. So by far, all of that, 100% of both these systems are within the city of Columbus. So I'm going to pass this on to Engineer Otterness, who's going to give you a little more details.
So I'll talk a little bit about how we got from the concept of where we wanted to work on repair these systems to the actual process of constructing them. And Elizabeth, if you can go back one more slide again. So the areas that we're talking about, County Ditch 31 is located generally west of Kettle River Boulevard and mostly to the south of Broadway Avenue. This general area here north of Howard Lake. There is a portion of the drainage system that does go up to the north here, north of Broadway Avenue. But all of this area here generally drains to the south and to the east, and eventually into Howard Lake. This is the area that we repaired, basically the system that goes all the way through here on this blue dashed line here, and snakes back all the way back to this direction, even to the west of Furman Avenue there. The other system that we worked on was County Ditch 46. It's located down here, generally along Potomac Avenue. Most of it is west of Potomac, although there's portions of it that is east of Potomac. Also north of Camp 3 Road, and stretching down to as far south as past 153rd Avenue. This system generally flows from west to east through the old historic Columbus Lake and into Rice Creek. So these are the areas that are drained by these systems, served by them, and those are the properties along those systems that actually paid for the construction of the system back in the 1890s, and that's where the benefits and the rights to the system date back to, and those carried forward from all the residents that paid to construct the system back then all the way on to the landowners that are currently there today. That right does not diminish, it carries with to each property owner. And so that gives you a general idea of where we are working at and what properties that are being served by the system. So one of the things that is important to understand is the process in doing these repairs. It's not something that we can just go out and say, well, we're going to go out and dig the ditch and we'll get the excavator out there and start moving dirt around. It's a lot more complicated than that for several different reasons, probably most prominently due to the regulations that are out there, particularly environmental regulations, and the state statutes which govern the construction and repair of the drainage systems. There's actually an entire state statute called 103E that deals with drainage. It's been around for a long, long time, and it's something that we have to conform to when we're working on these systems. So we have this process that we've been working on with every one of the drainage systems that we've done repairs to, which begins with understanding first what the system features are, where the drainage system is on the landscape, what dimensions it was constructed to, and how much right-of-way there is along the system to be able to access to do the maintenance. And it's very important to get that figured out first so you know what you're dealing with, because though it may seem simple, in reality, it can be very difficult to determine what that system was constructed to, even the extents of the system. That was one thing that we noted at various locations that were identified previously in the past as potentially being part of the public drainage system. We identified through our research that there are portions of it that really are actually private drainage channels. Once we do that records investigation, then we can start looking at what kind of repair we want to complete. We complete an engineer's report. It's called a repair report that determines the approach you want to take in doing the repair, determines what kind of permits are necessary, and that's where we begin developing our construction plans for the project. And then as we're doing that, another step that goes in conjunction with that is determining where the sources of funds are to complete the repair. And I'll be getting into that a little bit, how that was allocated for this project. And then finally, when you get through all those steps, then you can start thinking about actually constructing and building the system. And generally, this is a 4-year process. It doesn't happen overnight. We have to take it very deliberately so we don't skip steps. We don't add additional cost to the process. We don't get ourselves into trouble with the regulations that we need to deal with when completing this work. And because of this approach, it's very important with us to be able to engage the public, particularly those benefiting landowners to the system, so they understand what is going to be happening along the way. They can be able to provide input in the process, provide personal knowledge of what's going on, where problem areas are, where they believe that the system has been located in the past, what needs to be done with it. And we take that input. We hold public information meetings, public hearings for these particular projects. We actually had 6 different dates where we had information meetings and public hearings, and many of those were separate, one for County District 31 and one for County District 46. They were usually held on the same day, just concurrently, and we were able to get feedback from the landowners. I know there's several of you up front here that actually attended some of these meetings and were able to weigh in on some of the information that we were developing as we move forward with the project. And then finally, we get to the construction, and that began in 2016 in summer. We began with our permit acquisition and completion of the construction plans. We were able to move that forward onto bidding and awarding the contract further into the summer. And then the actual construction itself began in October 2016 of last year. And then we actually formulated the project in order to be able to allow flexibility for the contractor to be able to complete the work during a variety of conditions. Because as you know, this area that we're dealing with has a lot of very wet areas, which can make it challenging to do complete work under spring conditions or summer conditions. So we set this up for the contractor to be able to work under fall and winter conditions in addition to the summer conditions, and be able to space it out in case they needed that work to go through an entire construction season. But what we also ended up doing was providing an early completion incentive that provided incentive to them in order to be able to get the job completed in a quicker fashion. And in fact, our contractor was able to get the work completed with the full incentive, and that helped out a lot to be able to have the project completed in a timely manner so that we actually could utilize the full capacity of that system during the summer of this year to allow flood events to move through the system. And as you're well aware, this summer we had a lot of rain, particularly in the early parts of the summer, and the drainage system really proved to do its job and to be able to lower water levels throughout the summer. So, who paid for this project? The district has been looking at this issue ever since it started really focusing on completing repairs of the system. And early on, when they had their very first major repair project, Judicial Ditch 4, the Board of Managers recognized that there are portions of the project that can be allocated to those people that are benefiting landowners, in addition to the project costs that provide a larger public value that are allocated to the entire Rice Creek watershed district as a whole, all 26 cities within the watershed district. And so as a result of that, during these projects, we've been able to allocate the majority of those costs for those projects to the watershed district, and a smaller amount back to the landowners that receive the direct benefit from the drainage system. As you can see, for the County Ditch 3146 projects, the Rice Creek Watershed District bore 50% of the project cost, and the landowners that received the direct benefit from the drainage from the project paid for approximately 40% of the cost, with the remaining 3% by the road authorities, both the city and the county. Now, please understand that if we were to do a traditional repair utilizing the state drainage code 103E, particularly if we were doing a project in outstate Minnesota, we would be required to have the project entirely funded by those receiving the benefits. So those folks that drain directly to the ditch would have paid for 100% of the project. So the fact that the watershed district has this ability and authority under different parts of the state statute to be able to utilize funds to pay for these projects, those landowners were able to have a much lower burden of cost for completing the project. With that, I'll turn it over to Garrett Munson to talk a little bit about the construction itself.
Yeah, so Phil talked a little bit about the big picture, and Chris honed in a little bit on these systems. And as a project manager, I got to be involved in more of the day-to-day type of things. So we're going to go through a little bit of how the project looked throughout the process. There were some typical work types that were a large part of this project. Clearly, it's a ditch, so you got to excavate the channel. Otherwise, the water's not going to have anywhere to go. But a large component of these repairs, as we're doing the systematic repair, is removing trees and creating a maintenance corridor so that maintenance can be continued into the future, so that a repair isn't necessary again. Maintenance a lot cheaper. So removing those trees is a big component and a great portion of the cost. And then when we're doing the excavation of the channel, we're removing sediment, but not just sediment, in the areas where the profile of the existing ditch is actually below the as constructed profile. That's the legal profile we're allowed to excavate to. Through there, we're also removing excess vegetation that slows down water, so that we're really restoring the hydraulic efficiency of the ditch. And then up here in Columbus, where it's pretty flat, the hydraulic control is usually the culvert. So we're replacing culverts, and the board of managers has elected throughout these projects to do the replacement of private crossings too, which usually under 103E again would be the landowner's burden to maintain and repair their own crossings, but the district has recognized that this is an opportunity to get the entire system functioning, so they do replace those culverts as part of the project. So we're going to go through a couple of pictures. I'm going to start with ACD31. Once again, that's the northern of the two systems north of Howard Lake here, and we're just going to show some of the bigger impact pictures. So this is ACD31 main trunk right by 167th when you're looking downstream. This is what it used to look like. There is some hummocks in the middle of the ditch, a lot of brush and trees, and not a lot of flow going through very quickly. And then if you click right there, this is now looking south from 167th. You can see a lot of removal of small trees so that we have that maintenance corridor. Nice smoothed spoil pile, which looks great underneath that snow. And then what you can also see there are those little dips, about 1/3 and 2/3 of the way up through the photo. One of the things that's important when doing a repair is to make sure you're providing backside drainage. So that was something that we made sure our on-site representative was making sure was happening in low places to make sure that those spoil piles weren't holding back water on land, that were actually enabling drainage to happen. This is moving north now, north of the Vanconite Pond. Here we have some horse pastures right on the ACD main trunk. There is a ditch in that picture. It's right along the right side there, right where that snow is, believe it or not. And if you go to the next picture, oh, there it is, we found it. So we really restored a lot of that capacity. This is one of those locations where it was so vegetated in, you could hardly tell the ditch was there. And now it's providing the drainage function that it needs to. This is along branch 1 of ACD31 looking north from Broadway. So if you were cruising down the highway, there was a stand of trees that if you didn't know there was a ditch in there, you wouldn't be able to tell because the trees are right around it. And this is an example of an area where maintenance would be nearly impossible because you can't get a backhoe in there to excavate. So when you look at it after the fact, we are able to clear those trees out of there, a lot of undesirable trees, create that maintenance corridor, restore drainage. And in this area, we saw water levels drop 3 feet. Now I'm going to show a couple snapshots from ACD46. Once again, that's the southern portion over along Potomac Street. So this is the main trunk south of Camp 3 Road. This was a portion where there had originally been a pipe underneath Camp 3 Road, and it got crushed and over years just kind of lost. And a private drainage system was providing the public benefit. So this was an area where we had to restore that public drainage system, and this is what Phil talks about with a deer path ditch, where this was just years and years and years of accumulated sediment, no water going through it, and just a stand of trees. We look at it after the fact. We open up that maintenance corridor, get a real ditch again, put that culvert back under Camp 3 Road, so now the public drainage system is what's providing the public benefit. We're no longer relying upon a private drainage system to serve that benefit. And what's interesting about this picture is if you can see in the channel that ice is collapsed. And that is because excavation was completed, water was flowing through the ditch, and then we hit freezing temperatures. And then the good news is that water continued to drain and it fell, so that ice collapsed on top of it. So that meant the ditch was doing its job. This is branch 3 south of Camp 3 Road. If you can kind of tell in that stand of trees right in the middle, there's a red barn playing hide and seek. Keep that in mind as kind of your frame of reference. The next picture is from the same position, I swear. Once again, public drainage system, and it's doing its job. Removing those trees, allowing that maintenance corridor to be created makes a huge difference. And then this is right on 153rd Avenue looking north on branch 5. Once again, heavily treed area, a deep portion of the public drainage system where we have steep banks on either side. And when we go through and do the work, we're able to remove a lot of those trees, excavate a fair amount of material, and get that grade back down so that that drainage benefit is there. This is immediately downstream of agricultural land, so this restoration of drainage has a big impact in order of making tillable acres. And then we have a drone video of the portion of ACD31 Branch 2. That's right just north of 167th where Vassar Street extends along out there. So we're going to show a short clip, and that's going to show the before condition, the during condition, and then the post condition from just yesterday.
And as this queues up there, I'll point out a few things that you can really notice in these, the video here. One thing that will be very apparent is the amount of tree clearing work. You know, Garrett had talked quite a bit about that. That's actually one of the largest expenses for the project, is actually just getting the trees cleared to be able to restore that access for the drainage system to have the ability to be maintained.
I don't know.
Can I ask you, well, she's, on the icon on the bottom.
What do they do with the trees? They chip them on place or haul them out of there? Or?
Well, that was my question. Whose trees, I mean, they were in was that an easement, or who owned the trees that you took down?
So those treated areas are within what we refer to as the right-of-way of the system. There's not an actual dedicated easement along there, but there is an area on there that is identified per state statute that the Drainage Authority, in this case the Rice Creek Watershed District, has the right of access to be able to complete maintenance along that area. And that was one of the important parts of our early parts of our public information, public hearing process, was to identify those areas where the right-of-way corridor was, so that people would be able to provide public input if they felt that that was either incorrect or that they wanted to be able to save certain trees. So we were able to do that for several landowners that had a tree that they identified was of high value. We were able to work around them. The remaining trees we, I believe, entirely chipped. Is that right, Garrett? The trees were all chipped along there, with the exception of maybe some areas where the landowner wanted to keep the tree material for themselves.
Okay, so that was offered? I mean, I have somebody along your ditch that you came home and all their trees are gone, had no idea. Obviously, you must have done your legal notifications, but they were kind of like, hey, what happened here? And they just bought the property, didn't know that the ditch was even a relevant thing, but.
Yeah, and we did a lot of effort to try to engage and communicate with folks. Every time we had one of those public meetings, public hearings, we were able to send out a list to all the landowners that drained to that area, so that they would know about it and have the invitation to attend.
You should probably watch this before it goes away.
You can see Vassar Street along here for reference. We're going actually from east to west. You can see all the trees along this corridor, and then actually the drainage system extends all the way through this wetland, and you can't really even see it. There's just a little bit of a hint of a shadow. If you walk through there, you wouldn't be able to tell there was a ditch there at all. Now we're coming back. We're actually heading to the east. This is mid-construction, and now you can see there's actually a channel in there where you really couldn't see a channel before along the drainage system. Again, we're heading back over toward Vassar Street, so here's the west end of Vassar Street. You can see where we cleared trees out along this side to gain access here, and there's some of the contractor's equipment. Again, this is mid-project. A lot of those photos that Garrett showed earlier were also mid-project, so you could tell that there was a lot of disturbance, disruption of the ground. That since then has been vegetated, restabilized. But you can see how much of a difference it makes here. We did encounter some of these private crossings along the way here. But you can see that there's definitely been a lowering of the water levels here. And then even after the project, after there was time for the system to drain water levels down, the water has since gotten much lower along the drainage system. You'll see with the next video here as well. But this is an example of what it looks like today. We actually shot this video, I believe, yesterday along here. Again, we're heading now back to the west again. You can see the power lines here that run parallel to Kettle River Boulevard. And you can see now that it has revegetated along the system. The water levels are much lower than what they were even during construction. And we're again maintaining this access corridor here. Something that's important to the watershed districts to be able to keep that clear. We're going to do maintenance. I think that's enough. gotten most of the video there. But very important to be able to keep that corridor so that the district can continue to do maintenance, because it will require maintenance into the next several years for sure, more intensive maintenance. And the district will still maintain its obligation as long as the drainage system is there.
Okay.
Can you pull the presentation back up one more time, Elizabeth?
So where did this water, I mean, it's a question that comes up in Columbus, where did it go? I mean, is this flooding out somebody else, or how does that, could you address where, did you just move the problem somewhere else?
Yeah, and that's a very important part of when we're doing this analysis, that we do look into that and make sure that we aren't creating problems elsewhere. One thing to keep in mind is that these areas, even though we had a very poorly defined drainage system, water still went down those paths. It still had to go somewhere. It just didn't, disappear. It went away, but it would go away a lot more slowly. So what we did was provide that system to be able to allow that water to get through there faster. And for County Ditch 31, it goes directly into Howard Lake, large body of the water. It has basically no effect on the downstream lake and system. On County Ditch 46, that goes directly into Rice Creek. Rice Creek, again, is much larger. We did look at what would be happening downstream from there in our modeling that we do as part of our repair report, and we determined that it would not be a negative effect caused by the project.
So Rice Creek went up and Howard Lake went up a little bit. I mean, had to, right?
Not enough to even be able to model.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
that's a very important part of our process.
Okay.
And I guess maybe we'll just note the last few points here is that, as I mentioned, the district will be continuing that inspection. They're going to mow and spray along the drainage system. There is going to be sediment that will get in the channel, particularly these first few years, because when you dig these ditches out, it takes a time for the ditch to actually heal itself. One thing we found looking at historic records is back in 1890 when they constructed one of these systems, they dug it out. 2 years later, they had to go back in and redig a lot of it. And we find a similar process now when we're dealing with a ditch that we're essentially redigging in a lot of places. We're going to have to go in there, do some more scooping here or there. It's a much less expensive process once we have that corridor there and once we got the majority of that sediment removed.
Will that be assessed again?
No, because we do have maintenance fund to be able to complete this work on into the future here.
All right. Okay.
And that's all I have here today. Again, we wanted to really thank the folks that are involved with this. One individual we'd especially like to point out, the City of Columbus, Jim. He's a very important part of the project team. He is involved all the way from our design of our project through our pre-construction and on through the construction. He provided a lot of guidance as to what needed to be done, particularly along the city streets. So appreciated his help.
All right.
How do you work with the wetland buffer people? He's behind you there, and
They haven't fought yet.
Well, one of the important aspects is when we're doing this work and we get our excavation completed, that we go back in and make sure we have vegetated slopes and vegetated locations along the banks of the ditch. And after that, it's really up to the landowner to make sure that they keep it vegetated to comply with the state statute. So it's the landowner's responsibility once our work through there is completed. But we do make sure that we get that initial revegetation done, because that's our role and our responsibility as part of the construction.
I had the same question, Mr. Mayor, and I saw at one of the last scenes that it would, did that grow in one season?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? The presentation?
Is that a hydro seeding you do or something? Well, how do you plant your vegetation? Just
Most of that was hand broadcast. Conditions were too wet to allow large equipment for hydro seeding.
okay.
But along Vassar Street, there was some hydro seeding.
Thank you.
Bill?
So the water quality with the vegetation gone and all the logs and trees and everything, does the water quality come up then?
I would say that we're essentially maintaining the water quality along the drainage system. I think that there are areas where our work that we're doing may help with that, particularly if we had bad or invasive vegetation that was keeping the vegetation sparsely vegetated along there, so it wasn't acting as much of a buffer. But you know, certainly the focus of our project was as a drainage project.
Because we, Councilmember Peterson and I were on the Sunrise River. My stint was much shorter than his. However, their beliefs, I mean, the ditches on the north end of Columbus are a mess. They're full of logs, they're full of debris, they're full of everything, and the water flowing north into the Sunrise, it doesn't. And their beliefs are that all that letting the water pile up or whatever back up is good, because then there's less phosphorus and stuff in the water. So I don't believe that, but I think Tom had that discussion with Jamie once, and so anyways, I was just curious if that actually does help the water quality.
It does.
It all is site specific, site dependent. Again, I think that the way we did our vegetation establishment definitely is going to help ensure that there's less sediment coming into the ditch, both for the water quality purposes and also to reduce maintenance costs into the future, because that's, you know, a very important thing for you know, our own efficiencies, and make sure that we're not continually coming back there. But you know, then again, it's that wasn't the focus of this particular project. Rice Creek has a lot of other projects that they're dealing specifically with water quality improvement.
Good.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you have what I wanted to do, as long as these guys are here, if you guys wouldn't mind. We have a Pine Street issue, which is on Dennis's report. Can you skip to one of those pictures, and maybe we could just ask you a quick question about this. We have along Pine Street, which is the border between Columbus and Lino. We have an issue with water that's backing up, and we're looking at cleaning out the ditch along the road. And some of the questions that we have, do you have a photo of that, Elizabeth, or no?
I don't think I don't have anything in the agenda.
With a photo? Dennis, you don't have anything on there, do you?
Oh, the Pine Street I do.
Do you? Could you throw that on the projector, maybe?
Just kind of aerial.
Yeah. So the question goes back to the question we asked before. Where does the water go? We're looking at maybe repairing this ditch along a road, which would hopefully allow water to flow. But, you know, I don't know if you can back up. This is, to the right would be County Road 23. And the, you don't have, yeah.
This is Zodiac, and the county ditch is,
It's Pine Street there.
that's Pine Street.
It flows down by Rabine Arena. You know where that is?
County ditch is over here.
The bicycle arena thing that's closed. Anyways, it's right along there. And our question is we don't know which way the water's going. I mean, this is all private stuff, and there's no, Elizabeth, there's no public drainage things around here, right?
It's just a road ditch.
Just a road ditch. Do you have any information on where I'm talking about here? Do you know?
So this is.
It'd be a public ditch here.
Which public ditch?
That's called No County Ditch 102232 Branch 4.
Okay.
And the water along that ditch flows from north to south.
Does go
across
south.
Pine Street, yeah.
So if we clean out that ditch on the north side, because we're on the north, and it hits that ditch, and it makes it to that ditch, is that going to create a problem? How would that work? I mean,
I would have to look specifically at where the current drainage path is going there. Without knowing that, if the drainage is generally working that's way now, because it's going to have to go some way either east or west along the road, and then to a culvert that would be going to the south somewhere along there. But if it is going generally in that direction now toward the county ditch and then coming south, then we would presume then that you can continue to maintain that flow and that path going that
I
direction.
mean, can we,
A little bit of quick background, the elevation drop from Zodiac to the county ditch is 0.08 of a foot. So there's zero grade for half a mile. So I guess one of the questions is, if we clean it out at zero grade, with your experience, what kind of impact might there be? And you know, so there's 0% grade, but you're going to get some benefit for a while.
Yes, and there's a couple components to how efficient and effective your ditch is. One, as you're pointing out, is the grade, and when you're dealing with that shallow of a grade, you know, the amount of effectiveness of the ditch is going to be, you know, somewhat minimal. But it will be greater if it is cleaned out, if it's consistent, if you don't have a lot of vegetation in there, because it decreases the roughness and allows the water, once it does build up a little bit of height, to actually get out there. Whereas if you have a lot of vegetation in the ditch, blocking it up along the way, it tends to hold it up. It creates roughness in there. It takes a lot longer time for that water to get out and move back to the drainage system.
so then we'll end this real quick there, but if a private landowner or a city decides to create a ditch to empty into these public ditches, is there a permit required there? Is there, how does that work?
It depends on what the scope of the project is, how large of the project is, and I would recommend that when you're getting to the point of identifying the scope of your project, that you contact Rice Creek staff, and they can discuss with you specifically on that project whether or not a permit will be required or not.
To add to that, Mr. Mayor, if I could, so we offer free pre-application meetings. This sounds like one that I would strongly recommend the city staff or city engineer come talk. We can offer our engineers assistance who can attend that. Chris or Garrett could be there, as well as our wetland permit folks, who could also help you along with the permit process if necessary. Again, it depends on what you're proposing. You may or may not need a permit. You just don't know until you see what you're proposing and the scope of what you're looking at. If you can get through those hurdles, we also offer a cost share program for flood control. The board 2 years ago decided to take a water quality cost share program and expand that to allow cities to come forward with regional flood control programs, also as a cost shareable item. It's a competitive program. It's coming out at the end of October. It's a $50,000 maximum, match 50-50 with the city. If you're, again, it's competitive, so you're competing against the other cities. We have limited resources.
Do you think this would be considered a regional issue or more of a local issue?
Regional oftentimes is defined as if you have more than one community that you're dealing with in this issue. Oftentimes what we ask, and oftentimes is important, is if you're dealing with intercommunity flows, we ask that both cities come in together with the application. We don't want to necessarily get in the middle of an intercommunity issue.
And we've met with Lino actually at Rice Creek at your office, and with some of your other staff, and because there's not as many issues or impacts on the south side of Pine Street, they weren't necessarily interested in participating in some kind of a collaborative, multi-city.
The road creates a barrier, so all the water stays north, so it's not their deal.
And I'd also note that that cost share, you can't use the cost, if you were to have to get a permit, you can't use that money to meet the Rice Creek standards. But if you're not requiring a permit, or you're doing something that's not involved with our requirements, that cost share application, you know, is available to you.
Could we come to you and say, we want you to put a public ditch there?
Sure.
Pass the buck down.
So the short answer is yes, you can petition to do that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will go through, and it is something that takes an extensive amount of effort, and it also is something that requires a petition from the landowners themselves. And I don't have the exact percentages memorized on that, but it is something that requires a petition of a certain percentage of the landowners draining that area to establish that would be considered a new lateral to the existing public
Which
drainage
is what I
system.
think we need here, because all the people up, even to the right there, are all complaining. It's a retainage pond there that some people say it used to go that way, and the next guy says it went that way, and now it's going nowhere, and it's a problem, so.
And if that is established, then, you know, what would need to happen is, first you'd have to be able to provide a demonstration that or actually, it would be determined by the engineer assigned to the project to determine whether or not there are benefits sufficient to doing that, monetary benefits that exceed the cost of completing the project. And then once that would go through, then the cost would be, of the project would be assigned to all the folks that are benefiting from that lateral, and it would be those and those people only that would be paying for that project.
Yeah. All right, and we're really not a ditch authority, so you guys could probably do it better.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing that is happening, and I was talking to your staff earlier about this before the meeting, is currently you're starting a process with your local water planning process that you're required to do, you know, with your land use plan and some of the other stuff that you're working on. One important thing we're telling cities, if you have regional or inter-community flow issues in your community, make sure you list those in your water plan, because that's the avenue that the Board of Managers can see as a potential way to partner with you when you have regional flooding issues. And so in addition to those cost share discussions and the discussions with the pre-application, another important thing to recommend is that you identify those in your local water planning process that you're currently undertaking, so that the board can see that and potentially look at ways to assist you.
I think we have 2 or 3 of those that we might need to look at. One of them by Mastel there, so. All right, anybody have any other questions? Thanks for coming, guys. Sorry it took so long. All right, next up we have the Planning Commission report. Who do we have for that? Mrs. Krebs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff. On September 20th at 7 p.m., the Planning Commission held a regular meeting, and all members were present. We held 2 public hearings. The first public hearing and discussion was held for Construction Technology, Inc. at 13305 and 13411 Humber Street, Northeast. This request was for a preliminary and a final plat for Humber Estates. This is to reconfigure the lot line between them, as well as to dedicate right-of-way to the public for the construction of cul-de-sac when Humbert Street is terminated. After the discussion with revisions to number 2 by the city engineer for the cul-de-sac right-of-way modification and culvert extension, and omitting number 4 as recommended by city administrator, we, the Planning Commission, are recommending approval for this request.
Okay. Any comments? Someone want to make a motion to accept their approval, or?
I'll make a motion to accept the approval.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? Jeff?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
you're not accepting their approval, you're accepting their recommendation.
Accepting the okay, thank you. That's why we pay you the big bucks.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Right, is that okay with the
So moved.
seconder? Second, okay. All right, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Okay,
Okay, the second hearing and discussion was held for Mobile Mini, Inc. at 13957 Lake Drive Northeast. This is a Graphico Inc. lease site. We did have a neighbor directly to the north that shared his opposition of this company coming in there. This request is for a conditional use permit. Revisions in the findings and facts were made as follows. Number 14 in the findings and number 13 in the recommendations to allow stacking of 2 containers high, and during seasonal high inventory periods, a maximum of 3 containers high. This was accepted by the applicants as well. Number 25 in the facts was added for a side storage allowance at the beginning of the second building. A revised site plan was presented at the public hearing showing the proposed container storage on the south side of the existing building. And number 26, a revised landscape plan was presented showing the proposed plantings along Lake Drive and the north property line. They said they would be putting in 6-foot to 12-foot high trees. We've asked that a detailed illustration of the site be submitted to screening. With this being done, we, the Planning Commission, are bringing forward a recommendation for approval of the CUP request.
Okay.
You have a couple of items before you. The owner of the property to the north that testified at the public hearing did submit some additional materials. You have them with you in your place. What it is there's several agendas from Lino Lakes, and he felt it was important that the council see this information as he identified, at least from where his house is, that he was looking at it. He wanted some screening, as Jody indicated. The applicant said yes, that he would plant additional trees, but he felt that he wanted to bring to your attention that there were some issues, compliance issues with Lino Lakes. In the materials, I quickly reviewed them. It was, the compliance issues were about outdoor storage and stacking heights. And I think the Planning Commission did have an extensive discussion about stacking heights. And if you look in the conditions, it did indicate that they would allow them 2 high, and on occasion, it would be 3 high, and it would not exceed the building height. I think the council early on, a couple of meetings ago, you briefly talked about stacking of Conex boxes and gave some direction to the Planning Commission as we are working on an ordinance in the residential area.
Okay. I guess, Jody, the definition of seasonal high, is that a month, a day, a week, 6 months?
They didn't specify, they just
Yeah.
said at times,
Yeah, I can see
like
that.
at Christmas or
I can see
different
that as
time.
one day it's not, and the rest of the year it is.
Except for the point made during that, the planning commission is that these boxes are out being rented, and to have them sitting in the yard, they're not making any money. So I think they said that it would be a short period of time during their slow season, which is Christmas, January, whatever it was.
Why don't they just expand the storage area so they only go 2 high instead of the shorter area and go 3 high?
And I think they said they would go along with the 2 high thing too, but, so.
I would just like to see the 3 high at it with a number on it. So right now it's ambiguous. I don't think it's. Bill, do you think it's ambiguous? Seasonal. I mean, how I could just say this my season is. It's been a good season.
Yeah, you could. I mean, if you wanted to, you could clarify the months of the year. That'd be clearer. But I don't know. It's
I mean, that was my only concern. What do you guys think?
Well, if they went 3 high, are they talking alongside the front of the buildings too? Or just in the back center, the one side?
not in front of the building.
Well, they got storage along the side, correct?
The side, they
On the
requested.
south side.
Yeah,
So
yes,
those
they
could be
re-
3 high also? I didn't hear anything about that at the planning commission meeting, that's why I'm bringing it up now.
I think if I was right, didn't they not gonna put no storage ahead of the second building?
That's correct. That was
Correct. They were going to start at the second building.
Second building and back, yeah.
But, Mr. Daly, they did not say specifically that they would not be stacking those 3 high. There was no mention of them not stacking them at 3 high at times.
There wasn't where, it was just occasional 3 high, but wherever they want.
Correct. They did not specify which location.
You know what I'm talking about. on the
I do,
property.
I get it. You don't want to do it up front, you want to do it back here if you're going to do it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you want to make a motion to change that, or what are you thinking? Phil? Jeff, what do you think?
Well, I can see here it's gonna be 3 high most of the year. I mean, you never know how much it's gonna be 3 high, but I don't know, what does it affect the residents? Is that why they don't want them 3 high?
there is a residence to the north of this property, and then there's a house that I believe at some point will transition to a commercial property. And then south is Ryback.
I don't know, I'd just rather see maybe expanding the size of the rental size area. I mean, they have the land, it looks like, unless it's low land. Why
No,
don't they just
it's not.
expand that and put too high and make it a bigger area.
I'm pretty sure it, yeah, I don't know.
I'd rather see the 2, not the 3, I'm sorry.
Okay,
We kinda had that discussion at our last meeting, and that's what I'd like it at.
Danny, what's your view?
It don't matter. either
Doesn't
way.
matter to you, Bill? Don't matter?
I agree with Mark. I'd rather see two, although I agree with the owner that if they're sitting in the yard, they're not making money, so I mean,
Yeah.
so, I
Jeff?
mean, I'd rather only see 2 high too.
They could bring the surplus over here from a different store too, if they had the room, and stack them 3 high that way too,
Right.
so.
I really don't wanna see them 3 high either. Maybe for a short period, a month or 2, but out of a year,
From a regulatory
be
standpoint,
pretty tough.
it's easier
Yeah.
to just draw a line at 2,
Right.
because then you're not trying to figure out which season you're in and why you have a peak.
Right. All right. So I then we have to say where. I'm kind of agreeing with you, Mark. So, someone want to make a motion to approve or deny
I
this?
think we should, before we do
Subject
that, I
to
think we
regulations.
should talk about the screening.
Okay. What do you want to talk about there, Bill?
We all know that these houses down there are in the commercial area.
Yep.
However, while this individual, they were very willing to move some trees around and do some screening on his side of the property, so that's all in there too, right?
So in your agenda packet, you do have the updated drawings for
Page
this
33.
particular application.
Okay.
And on page, what they would call C21, in this particular case, they did show that the storage of the containers would start at the second building. And that was one of the things that the planning commission wanted. And in addition to the north, the landscape plan is pages back. And they do show, one line of trees in the front. They show a line of trees to the rear, and then they offered this 2 rows of trees because the residential property is to the north here, and the property line looks directly into what would be the new storage yard. Because this area here is all of storage for the 500 units, or possible 500 units.
Okay. You get that, Bill?
Yep, we're good with it.
Okay. So short of changing was at number 13 to average of 2 containers.
14?
I think if you're saying no more than 2 containers in height, then you wouldn't average it, right?
You wouldn't average it.
No.
No, you would just say maximum of 2. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, there was
Yep.
one other issue that was brought to the attention of the city, and that's whether or not we would allow a second business on the property. And the application proposed is for 1 business on the
I
property.
talked to the property owner. There's no intention of a second business. So that's not an issue. He knows that. He knows it'll be 1.
And the conditional use permit runs with the 1. It says
Right.
the entire acre
Yep.
is to be
I
split in 1.
think he's good with all that, so. Okay. Someone want to make a motion with the change to 2 high on number 13? To accept or deny?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay,
Second.
all right, any further discussion?
Is this gonna have to go forward to him and he's gonna have to agree to that?
Yeah, it'll just be that.
Mhm.
That's just what it is.
Yeah, conditions are often amended at the city council,
Right.
so.
Right.
All right,
Here you go.
hearing no other comment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, that wasn't so hard. Next one might be tougher.
We had 2 ordinance discussions, won't be hard. On the ordinance amending Chapter 7 to allow and regulate asphalt concrete production facilities, We started with Attorney Steen discussing each section of the draft ordinance prepared by the staff. After reading through all sections, a motion was made to send it forward to you, the city council, with the draft text and the recommended amendments by the applicant. A second was not heard, so it was shot down. A second motion was made to forward to the city council a request to continue the discussion.
Okay.
And we certainly can go through all of the points of discussion if you want to, unless you want to just wait until we go through
Actually,
it.
I think, according to Bill, you believe that at this point we should let the discussion continue and then go to a public hearing where we can have input from opposition and opponents?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, we provided a short memo in your packet just to clarify the process, because we've been getting, because of the interest in this application, we've been getting a lot of questions about process. This really is no different than any city-initiated amendment, other than the interest of the public. And that is that when the city council refers an ordinance to the planning commission, the planning commission does all of its work essentially, and then forwards it back to you to set a public hearing.
Elizabeth, can you put this up there?
And so we're really at the stage where it's this ordinance is kind of over at the planning commission right now.
Right.
And it'll come back to you maybe next meeting, maybe 30 days. When their work is final, it comes back to you to set a hearing. And usually, but not always, they would have a recommendation of approval, denial, or amendment. So it can come with a recommendation whether or not to approve. But it's certainly, their work is to get you a complete and final ordinance for a hearing.
Okay.
Bill, what if it gets stalled out another time?
What if it gets stalled out another time?
Yeah.
Well, it can't. I mean, ultimately, the planning commission's job is to finalize an ordinance. Whether they agree with it or not, they can indicate that. But they have to get something to you to set a public hearing. And that's their task under state law and our ordinances. So they really can't, I suppose they could stall out, and then you'd have to, essentially tell them to.
Didn't our sign ordinance take 9 months?
It took a long time. So, I think given the interest in this application, the related applications, this is a city-initiated ordinance amendment, but given the interest, I think it's incumbent upon the planning commission to reach some consensus document that they can send back to you, and they can indicate individually or as a group what their position is on that document.
So I was at the planning commission meeting. It went horribly wrong. So how do we keep them on, how do they stay on task to do what's directed? I mean,
I think the simplest thing, if I can, Mr. Mayor and
Go ahead.
Council, is to, assuming I understand what that means, I think the impression I have, and I was not at the meeting, is that when you start to lump in all the project issues with the ordinance itself, you start to, kind of run a field. And what I mean by that is the applicant agreed to defer the decision on the conditional use permit and other project approvals, meaning the plat, until such time as the city comes up with this ordinance. So the job now is to look at the ordinance, assume that there's this applicant or maybe a future applicant, or maybe something on Lake Drive that this might apply to, and think holistically about what should be in our regulatory program in the ordinance. Because if you decide to go forward with the ordinance, then it'll be joined up with those applications at a later date. It will probably be approved or denied first, and if it's approved, then the conditional use permit and the subdivision will then be viewed through the lens of this new ordinance. So I think the way for the planning commission not to get too far afield is to focus on regulating the use of asphalt plants or concrete plants, because it would apply, some of the performance standards would also apply to concrete plants. As if we've got, maybe multiple sites where that might apply, or we've got the one on Lake Drive and potentially the one on the freeway, but not necessarily just focusing on what's been proposed by the applicant. So I hope that, I hope that gives some direction. That's the best way to get the work done, because anything we do as a city should apply equally to anybody who comes in a similar position.
Correct. So to answer your question, I believe you just need to go back and grind it out and come back with a yay or a nay or an ordinance of some sort.
Okay.
Maybe it might be no ordinance, I don't know. Whatever it is, it's and I think the planning commission in its due diligence understands that time is money, and a prudent solution here, whether pro or against, is only good for our citizens. Go ahead, Joe.
So the confusion really is the ordinance, not the fact of the asphalt plant itself.
Correct.
So
This could, the way it's drafted, potentially prevent another cement factory on Lake Drive. It could prevent a cement factory on in the freeway district. So it's
And it could also, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Let's say the cement plant on Lake Drive wants to add capacity. These new performance standards then might, if adopted,
Right.
apply to any future expansion of that facility.
right.
So during that, the planning commission meeting, the applicant was there. They're able to answer questions, correct?
But it's really not an applicant at this point, right, Bill? It's because that's on hold.
Right, the chair and the commission are free to seek input. The public doesn't have a right to testify until the public hearing. So the planning commission, just as the mayor, when he conducts the meetings and hears from interested parties, it's done selectively to inform the commission in its work. It's not the right to be heard part of the hearing. It's the commission seeking information that they think would be helpful to do their work. And they have the discretion, just as the mayor in leading this body has the discretion to decide when they seek that information. But it's not the right of the applicant, or it's not the right of the public to come forward and give testimony. Because there is a hearing for that
Right.
purpose.
It could be allowed in the interest of fact finding.
In the interest of fact-finding,
Sure.
exactly. Yep.
So that opportunity then will come when the hearing.
Well, that opportunity has to come at the public hearing.
Correct. Legally,
Yes.
by the
Yes.
state law, the public interested parties have the right to testify at the hearing.
Right.
And the reason I'm asking that is because there's just a lot of misinformation that's out there right now that needs to come forward, and so.
Well, Bill, that'll be
hearing.
Garth's deal to make sure that the planning commission generates the text amendment with the right information. I mean, he's gonna have to allow or disallow.
Well, I'm talking about information pertaining to the actual asphalt plant. This is the text amendment, the asphalt plant really isn't anything.
Yeah, right.
So,
That's why I'm suggesting if it helps the planning commission understand, that they screen out, most of that information, unless it's helpful to the regulation,
Mhm.
then they can ask questions. But it's not about the project at this point.
Clear?
Yes.
Clear as mud?
Very clear, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, our second discussion was on the ordinance amending Chapter 7A 805. 6 of the points that you addressed at the last city council meeting were supposed to be added into this text as it was still at the draft stage. 3 of those points did somehow not make it into the draft, and that was the 40 feet with no stacking and welding, the amending of the container being placed on non-degradable base, and the factoring of 2 on the square footage. And so we still need to have that added before we can bring that forward for conclusion to you, the city council.
Okay.
And that was our evening.
A lot of container issue with blacktop under it, right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anything else that you'd like
Guys
brought
have
back
any
to the
questions?
city or to the planning
No, she
commission?
addressed it,
Gotcha.
I had it.
Jeff? Okay. All right. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing from you in 2 weeks. All right. Public open forum. Is there anyone here for public open forum tonight? Oh.
Good evening, council members, mayor. Dan Mike, 15123.
I am here tonight asking, pleading with the city to get some kind of control
Stoplight.
device, traffic control device on
Stoplight,
Hornsby.
is it?
Stop, you said?
A stoplight.
Yes.
Yep.
Some kind of traffic control device.
So we had talked the other night, and Dennis, you were in on that, I believe. It was a bit of a joke, but the light at Running Aces Boulevard, as they call it nowadays, will have really little function once the roundabout's done. And the question is whether we could repurpose that light on a state highway with the right paperwork and people behind it. Would we save money by doing that?
Yeah, and I haven't got any contact with MnDOT about that yet. I know, I don't know all the details of the light, the pole and the arms that are out at
Yeah.
Zurich and
Yep.
Lake. So there might be some salvageability, but I think you would need new mast arms and heads, so you might be able to save the posts. Haven't done a detailed analysis of that, what that would be. We have put in a request to MnDOT that as part of the design build project that they look at the traffic counts closer and look at some type of whether it's a signal or I don't know if they're going to go any further than that.
It's the left out that's the concern, right? The right in is not a problem. Left in is,
It depends on what time of day you're at.
yeah.
Left
Sorry, I don't know if you didn't mention if everybody knows what we're talking about. It's Hornsby Street
and
on the
97.
east side
Yeah.
at Hornsby at 97 on the east side of the freeway.
Again, it depends on what time of day you're at there, you know? I mean, in the mornings, yeah, if you're trying to make a left out,
Yeah.
head westbound, good luck. You know,
Even a right out at evening and stuff.
especially with some heavy equipment behind you, now you're that much slower trying to get out of there.
Okay, need a bigger truck.
So,
I think we should put one in, because just simply, it's just gonna get worse, and then when it's gonna get done anyway, eventually, when the development comes on the northeast corridor, so why don't we just do it now and be done with it, or see what we can do to get it done.
Well, I agree.
So I too was at that meeting, and we talked with Dennis a little later on, and I believe that was that the Anoka County guy? The new guy that took, is his name Adam?
Joe was the
Yeah, but the old guy's name was Adam, right? No?
who was the assistant coach?
Yeah. Anyways, the new guy said that the funds, the cost of the roads are probably not gonna be as much as they anticipated, so there may be some money that could be applied to putting a stoplight there.
Just a
So-
new one?
Yeah, and
From the bonding money
for the bonding money, however, there is a little bit of a hang-up with the bonding money. We heard that there's a little bit of arguing going on.
Yes, that hasn't been resolved yet.
Right, it hasn't been resolved yet. So there could be some funds left over where it could be applied to the stoplight on Hornsby, but I think, I think personally, I think we kind of missed the boat here. There should be a stoplight, even on Saturday morning.
No, I
You try
agree.
and pull out there mid-morning on Saturday, good luck.
Is that the consensus of the council, Danny? Bill? So, we want one. So, I mean, we will do the process with our engineer to see if we can get it done.
okay, well, thank you.
Okay. That wasn't very tough. All right, anyone else for public open forum? Nope. One.
Mr. Mayor and Council, when we were having our Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday, we had a nice big study done by the McCombs Group, which was the first time we had seen it, and we didn't really go through it at all. Are we able to have him come out and explain what he...
I actually talked to Tracy Wilson at Running Aces today, and she would really like to have him explain what he came up with. And I figured it would be maybe better to bring him to a council and have him just tell us all what he saw or how he presented that. I read part of it, I didn't read it all, but
Or is that, what is that?
Mr. Mayor and Council.
how would that work?
Yeah, again, because there's a number of pending applications, I think the best way to think about it is which which application does it apply to? And
No, I don't know if it's really, it's, I mean, we paid him in 2015 to do a study. Running Aces has paid him to do a new study, talking specifically about some of the changes that are at the EDA level. I mean, if he showed up at the EDA level, I think it really would be different than if he showed up at a council meeting or.
What's the subject of
The subject is the land use in that area. Because part of his 2015 findings were that we need to rethink about what we're doing down there because the big box blah 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 thing is gone, and that's his furthering information is about what could go there.
Right, and Mr. Mayor and Council, again, going back to the days when the racetrack was approved, what we tried to avoid was a number of ad hoc public hearings occurring about project applications and text amendments. So if the materials are most germane to the text amendment, then it should be provided as background for that consideration. It could also be provided when project approvals come up. But if the city entertains this as a separate discussion item, then it creates something that's outside of the state statute, which is to have the materials considered as part of a public hearing. Now, if it truly is just about land use through a 3-mile district, then it's a different consideration. But if the intent is to influence the decision-making on either the text amendment or the CUP, then it should be heard in those contexts.
It's a fine line, but you read it? I didn't read the whole thing.
The whole thing, no.
Okay, it's pretty thick. Is that what its intent is to talk about the specifically asphalt? If it's specifically about asphalt plants, I agree with Bill. But if it's in general, then I think we should.
There is some of both. There is general, and there is also addressing the
asphalt.
The change that will happen when the.
Well, then I guess I agree with you, Bill. We should probably.
May I do?
Sure.
I recommended to Tracy and Dr. Tay about if it's information there to bring it up at the public hearing, or number 2, the EDA meeting. If that's what it really applies to, then we should be talking about it at the EDA level.
But I think if it specifically has asphalt in there, then I think it's
got quite a bit in there.
Okay, well then, I agree with you. Yeah, I guess it does. So.
And I'm not, as your counsel, I'm not saying it isn't germane to the text amendment. I mean, it may be. And so I think it's up to the Planning Commission and the chair of the Planning Commission to decide whether that information comes in as part of the text amendment. Any member of the public can submit materials that become part of the record of either the text amendment or the CUP. So that's, that's the normal process. Is anybody can try and influence that process by bringing facts forward, and they can say, we would like the Planning Commission to consider this. They can do that in writing prior to the hearing, and they can do that orally at the hearing.
But not at the discussion of the text amendment.
They can't testify to it at the discussion of the text amendment unless, again, the chair says, this is something that would be useful as we consider this regulation.
So this is all really at Garth and my discretion.
And I just want to say to the council and the public, the reason we're so buttoned down about this is because the role of the council and the Planning Commission is to be an impartial fact finder, okay? And you're really not supposed to take sides until all the facts are in. And as much as possible, we've got to maintain that impartiality throughout the process and not have things come in, through other doors so that there's a separate discussion going on that's separate from the public hearing process. That's just why we're trying so hard to maintain those parameters.
Okay, so at your advice, at attorney's advice, probably not then at the council, but if Garth believes it's germane to what they're doing, then he could bring him in to talk to you guys about that.
But how would that be done? At the next meeting, he would say that, and then 2 weeks from then, he would come in? I mean, how exactly would that?
Well, who sets the agenda, excuse me, who sets the agenda for the Planning Commission? So I guess, who's supposed to, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't ask Garth if he thinks it's germane. It's his meeting.
And also the members have the ability to vote to take in the information. But
they wouldn't be meeting before the next meeting.
The information's received by the administrator. Presuming presumably those who have prepared it want it to go to the bodies for consideration. And I think, you know, that's, you have to decide whether it belongs in that packet or the public hearing packet.
I mean, that information was disseminated to us, right, in the study.
But may I add one more thing?
Sure.
So if you're just taking the new study, everything at gospel there, the applicant should have that same right.
They do.
Yeah, they will, and if Garth.
But they did not at that last.
They're not done, so,
Okay.
yeah, they're not done.
Well,
Obviously,
they didn't
they
have
said
the
they're not.
option
done.
that-
To
on
be
the last
clear, if I
planning
could just
commission.
comment to that.
Sure.
To be clear, the applicant is engaged, fully engaged in commentary on the ordinance itself, just
Not on the application.
not on the CUP application. So they're providing their comments, both to the planning commission and our office on what they think should be in the ordinance. And so that discussion is occurring at the same time.
Just like anyone could.
Exactly.
Yep.
We get ourselves chasing our tails here, and we do this all the time. We do this sort of thing all the time. It's because there's so much public interest in this that we start to lose sight of our own process.
Sure.
And Elizabeth and I are trying as much as possible to say, folks, take all the controversy out of this. It's exactly the same as any other application that comes through. People can comment, the public can comment.
Not application, it's just, because the application's on hold, it's the same as any other ordinance amendment.
Exactly, that's correct.
So just so the council understands too, and the planning commission members, what's happening now is people are handing information over the counter the day of the meeting. And there is not a way to disseminate that the day of the meeting, other than running to the copier and trying to get it out. Nobody has read it, nobody has seen. So my frustration at the last meeting was, I didn't even have a chance to read it or look at it to see, was it a text amendment, was it a CUP, what was in it? And so, and then, you know, the notes on it were saying, well, make sure that all the council members and all the planning commission members get it. Well, you like to get the information out, but again, if you haven't read it and you don't know what's in it, you know what I mean, it's really hard to do that. And so I think that's the line that I asked Bill, what, you know, well, how do I know if it's the text amendment or the CUP or, you know what I mean, how the file is being created at this point? Because people are also asking for copies of everything in the file. Well, we get things every single day for both files.
And that's where, you know, the city, this city is more lax than others, and that's probably a good thing on most days. You allow things to come in, you allow people to come up here and talk, and you know, people feel like they've been heard. But in a lot of cities, there's a hard deadline that if you want something in a packet, you know, before a commission meeting, it's the Thursday before or the Wednesday before, and they toe the line, and they'll say, anything that comes in on Friday doesn't get into the packet. So I think we've got to do the same thing here, so we don't have Elizabeth, you know, running around copying things the day of the meeting. I mean, that's your direction and the commission's direction, of course, but that's how others prevent the kind of thing that Elizabeth has described.
Well,
Bill, that's my question. This is quite important to the city and a lot of the people. And this guy is a professional. The city's used him 3 or 4 times before. Wouldn't it be good to have him come and explain what he's packaged up for us?
Well, and to answer that, I think it will be when Garth or I say, hey, let's get this McCombs guy to come in, or definitely at the public hearing.
So, I mean, I don't know how far, I've been obviously reading through this. A lot of the pictures and things in this are not even close to what the applicant is even proposing in the plant itself or anything. I mean,
Well, that's where Garth will have to decide that, he'll take that in and he'll take in the next thing, and it'll all have to average out in their fact-finding thing, so.
But it's obviously been prepared on and paid for by someone.
That's not our deal yet.
Nobody should be concerned about
Yeah.
somebody submitting something until they have an opportunity to weigh it against whatever else is
Right.
submitted, and that's why we have a pretty open process about taking information in, and ultimately the planning commission, the body that's considering it right now, has to determine whether that report's germane to the text amendment.
I just ask that you guys either approve or deny it, come back with something fairly soon. I mean, I hope you wouldn't take 6 months or 9 months like the sign ordinance. So, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public open forum? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the Minnesota Machine 5K. You guys want to take a break for a minute? Or not?
No.
No? Okay, get it over with? All right. Thank you. Okay, you want to explain what you got going here?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. We are the Minnesota Machine. We're a women's full tackle football team based out of Osseo, Minnesota.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
There you go. Just,
And we're
I don't-
set.
Does that, I don't think that even, Elizabeth, that doesn't even go to the speakers, does it?
Sure.
Yeah. Is it working? Okay. All right. Sorry.
We're set to start our 9th season coming up. We'll be starting practices in January. Our season starts in April and runs through August. And we're looking to do a 5K fundraiser race this December so that we can get some funds for indoor practice facilities because, as you know, in Minnesota in January, it's usually not very warm outside. So we're looking to do this race, like I said, December 2nd. The route is listed on the packet there for you. It's approximately 3.09 miles, which is close enough to a 5K for us. The request we have tonight is to close down the section of Notre Dame between 165th and Kettle River because we plan to start the race in that parking lot on the east side of Notre Dame and finish the race in the same place. And so we want to close down that road in interest of participant safety as they're crossing the road to start and end the race. The closure would be approximately 7 a.m. to noon. That would include time for us to get there, set up, take registrations, get everybody started, finish the race, and then clean up and get out of there.
Okay. You're going to run on the gravel road then, to 165th?
Yes.
And then on the shoulder on?
Yes.
Elizabeth, is there any county? It's a county road, is that an issue?
You know, are you going out in waves where you're only gonna let a certain amount of people go out, or are you all together, or, you know, because the shoulders are only so big?
Right, and that would depend on how many participants we have. If it's a smaller number, we would be able to do it all in one shot. If it's a larger number, we would definitely consider staggering for safety.
You know, they would have to apply to the Anoka County Highway Department to see if there's any issues with them running on the shoulders. You know, we've seen people walk and run and, you know, on the
Yep.
shoulders, but this is they might have, I think you talked about 100 runners.
Yeah, we're anticipating hopefully 100 to 150 participants.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues on our roads, and you guys, what do you think?
No, there's only one house in that road, and Bob wouldn't mind.
Oh, yeah. Running by your house, so.
That's fine.
You don't mind?
Hand them water as they go by.
Okay, Bill? Jeff?
Doesn't matter to me.
So I think just pending the county approval, I don't think we have any problems. Elizabeth, do you think we need a motion to allow this, or what do we have to do here?
We need a motion to close the road.
Okay. And what about the use of the parking and things like that? Is that,
You know,
do we have other issues, other things going that day? Well, probably not. It's when?
December. You know, we've talked a little bit about, you know, using the park. It's kind of an off season. We also talked about they would have to rent porta potties or any of facilities because we don't,
Sure.
those facilities aren't in the park at that time for that particular race. So they said that they would take care of that, and they would also have to take care of garbage and such, but anyone using the park would have to do that.
Right.
What brings you up here? I mean, you're playing Osceola and.
I live here, or used to live here. I grew up here.
Oh, okay.
My parents live just a little bit north of Columbus Elementary.
Oh, okay. Sure. Well, I ran the 5K coming down from Columbus Elementary.
Oh, yeah?
You come down Notre Dame from came down from the school all the way down to the park had to take a little side jog. It was 3 miles. So yeah, I don't see any problem if you guys want to make a motion to
Make a motion
allow
to
close the road.
The 5K run by the women's tackle football team.
Okay, do we have a second?
December 2nd.
Second it.
Okay, any other discussion?
We have to make this with approval of Anoka County or just?
Yeah, probably. I mean, well, we can approve it, but if they don't get it from them, then it's no good. Right?
All right.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, next up, we have the engineer's report. Got 5 minutes again. Dennis?
A little bit more than that. Try to be as brief as possible. We've got the 3 paving projects, so we've got resolutions and public hearing notices for them. Starting with 159th and Zingu Street. In your package should be, try to take one resolution at a time. The first resolution is declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of the proposed assessment. One thing that I wanted to point out was that I had used an interest rate of 4.6%, which was from the last time we had an assessed project. And Elizabeth had gotten updated numbers for the interest rate, that it was somewhere between 2.5% to 3%, with 1.5% typically added on for city administration.
Yeah.
So that puts it between 4% and 4.5%.
So that'll help.
So if you wanted to go with a certain number for the resolution. And Elizabeth, I don't know if you had any more to add to that.
You know, I don't, this is gonna be an interfund loan out of the Blacktop Fund, so, we felt that, looking at Tammy for some advice would be good, and then the council will then establish the, rate, and then we would put it in the public hearing notice.
Okay, so do we have to pick this amount? Do we need to pick that before we make the motion?
You do, because the percentage has to be in the
resolution and in the public hearing
resolution.
notice.
Okay, so are you comfortable with the lower of the two?
I'd leave it up to Elizabeth, really, with the financing.
You know, it doesn't matter to me whether it's 2.5 or 3 plus the 1.5. That's been historically, we've always added the 1.5 for administrative costs.
Okay. Jeff, you good with that? Okay, so want to go with the 3? 2.5? 3? Going once?
Yeah, 3 is, you can always come down.
Okay, going once, going twice, 3. 3.
So it'll be 3% plus the 1.5 would be 4.5%.
Yep.
Would be the interest rate.
Okay.
So in front of you then is a resolution to declare the cost to be assessed, and we're declaring the cost for 159th and Zingy to be total project cost of $112,950. And just for your reference, that compares to the feasibility report that was $149,250, so significantly less. And asking you to approve the resolution at this time.
Okay, motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it.
Next resolution is for the same project. What it does is, it's a resolution to establish the public hearing for 159th and Zingu Street. And I believe at the last meeting, the council preferred not to have these on the same night as a council meeting, so we talked about October 24th, which is a Tuesday before the second meeting in October, we'll have all 3 projects.
Okay.
Public hearings. So, if you want to approve the resolution to set the public hearing for October 24th.
So moved. Second.
Okay, can we make that public hearing? That was for all 3, Dennis?
This is for 159th and Zingy.
No, can we just, okay,
But they're all on the same night, yes.
Need a separate resolution.
for each one? Okay, so, we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it.
And the notice of hearing goes along with that. You don't need to approve it.
Okay.
That'll be sent to the paper. So then the next project was Furman Street paving from Broadway about 1/3 of a mile south. And the first resolution is declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of the proposed assessment. Total project cost of $59,320. That compares to the feasibility report, which was $92,390, so again, significantly less. With the advertising, we had combined this project with 141st, so we had some good costs from the contractor.
Okay, we gotta pick our interest on this one?
Sorry?
Do we need to pick the interest rate on this one?
Yeah, we'll set the same interest rate, I presume, at 4.5%.
Okay, someone will make a motion to approve or deny this special assessment?
Approve.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. Then the make for
Second
the,
resolution for Furman Street was to set the public hearing for October 24th as well.
motion to. Any,
Set.
come on.
I missed it.
Set the hearing date,
October 24th.
October 24th.
Second.
Yeah, the second can't come before the motion.
I thought, well, for a second.
I was just helping you, Jeff.
Oh, you're helping me. I thought you made the motion.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And the third project was 141st Avenue, which is about a mile-long project. And again, approve the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of the proposed assessment for a total project cost of $184,600, which compares with the feasibility report of $297,000.
Okay, so want to make a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion? At 4%, 4.5.
At 4.5%.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
And the last resolution is same project, but establishing the public hearing, again, for October 24th.
So want to make a motion or want to second this first?
So moved.
Okay.
Second?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think we got Jessica awake yet. I think she's still somewhere else.
Vacation.
She's still jet lagged.
Yeah, did we miss the levy resolution?
Yeah, just leave it at 27. I think Dave was going through this, and then he'll jump back to the budget. But but let's not change the number.
We did miss that, but we'll go back. Okay.
And that's it for those three projects, setting special assessment hearings for October 24th. The next item on the engineering agenda was John's Black Dirt Inspection Report. And you should have that in your packet. I don't know if you have any visuals, but the darker map, the first one I included was, appears to be from the spring on Google Earth. And if you look at it at the lighter map, which was from last year, that's the lighter one is more yellowish looking. The darker greenish one is from this year. You can see that there's less, the haul roads are gone, these have been excavated, and so the ponds are starting to combine. Actually, when we were out there, Jim and I, along with Forest Lake Contracting, it doesn't look anything like this because they're dewatering into the adjacent properties pond with permission. And basins 2, 3, 4, and 5 are basically dry. And he's excavating sand on those haul roads between basin 2 and I'll call it 3, 4. That's one basin now. And also finishing up the haul road excavation between 3, 4, and 5.
So they're hauling.
Pardon?
Are they hauling right now?
They haven't hauled in several weeks. I think he said he has some more more excavation this year. Didn't know exactly how much, but there'd be some more hauling. Because of the term of the agreement and if he has more work in the spring, he'd be excavating basin 2. Well, that's not completely excavated, but he likely will never get into basin 1 of excavation. On the very northeast side of the site, it's in my small handwriting there, it says potential building sites. Those where there's some pads or elevations that would allow house building in the future.
Okay.
And
Looks
other than
like-
that, everything was looked good, and there wasn't any speed complaints we've heard of or anything.
Do you believe that he'll be able to finish out the checklist that we've given him? Because he's hauling things back in, he's taking things out.
Yeah.
He has a list of slopes to maintain, he's got a lot of stuff, he's gonna make
He said
it.
it was done, for the most part, back hauling in any material. He still has a topsoil stockpile.
Okay.
Spread out. I don't think he needs to haul much material back in. And he hasn't been back hauling recently.
Okay, and you believe he'll be on track and there's no issues?
From what I could tell, I didn't see
Okay.
anything that looked like a concern.
Do you guys have a drone?
No, we don't have the budget like the watershed does.
I don't know if you do. I don't know if you do or not.
No, wait, so does our police department.
But that's a good idea, because that would help on projects like this. I guess it's information at this point, unless there's any other.
Okay.
So it looks like they're gonna be able to complete their tasks and be onward and upward by their completion date in June.
That's what it looks like, and even though he'll not be done excavating all the material that's there,
It'll be done,
He
yep.
knows that. I know he's planning on, he doesn't really know in the future, 1, 2, 3 homes, it depends on if it necessitates a private driveway or a public roadway.
Oh, back to that.
Largely, because it's a long ways to get back there.
Right.
But when it's all said and done, basically basins 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, all you'll see is one body of water. There'll be some underwater benches
Okay.
where those haul roads are, but you'll just see one big.
And so the property to the left of the road, to the left of Basin 1?
That's the other owner.
Yeah, but that has no ability to haul on.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And so,
There isn't a conditional use permit or an interest permit on that property for hauling.
because that wasn't even supposed to be excavated correctly. So will those haul roads ever be taken out of there, or how will that be cleaned up?
West of?
Yeah.
Of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there would be any changes.
So that property owner, if she?
Yes.
Sold it, they could theoretically dewater back into the other side and then make that one basin and then use that dirt and make pads in there or something? Is that how that would work?
Again, on the west?
On the west, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming they'd have to come in for some type of permit.
Yeah, not to haul out of there, but I mean, just to clean it up.
Yeah, and my understanding is a lot of those basins are interconnected, they're kind of
They flow together.
elevation wise,
Because that'll be next. I mean, they'll want to sell it, develop it.
potentially.
It's beautiful land, I mean. Okay, anything else?
Not on that report. The next item was an update on Hornsby Street North realignment. And also, along with that, the interim striping. First, just on the project itself, we're still, as Elizabeth mentioned, waiting to hear from the county on the funding and associated with the bonding bill. And at the last council meeting, council talked about closing Hornsby Street and wanted to know what the schedule was. So we had heard back from the design build contractor that, if you've been out there, you've seen they've cleared some of the topsoil off the area they're renting. But the majority of activity is not gonna start until April. So that would be the time to close Hornsby.
For how long?
April through the end, basically the end of 19. April 18 through the end of the construction season 19. So let's say a year and a half.
Okay.
And then during that time, Hornsby would be reconstructed and realigned as well.
So did Forest Lake say they'll stripe it for us, Dave?
JW was talking to him.
Oh.
So we can talk about the striping now if you'd like.
Sure.
No, Forest Lake is not gonna stripe it for us.
Are they gonna stripe theirs?
Washington County stripes Forest Lakes.
How does that work?
They work out a deal in the beginning of the year, and they must say that we're gonna stripe 25 miles of road, and then they get a bid, and then they just stripe it according. So then I called Anoka County. Anoka County does not want to stripe our road either. So then I went and got another bid from AAA Striping, and I believe that one was $3,500. $3,576 to stripe the 2,650 feet. So I guess what we're looking for is, Century Fence is stuck on the $2,450 price. They're not gonna do it for anything less than that at this point. I guess we just need to know what you wanna do.
Well, they're doing the sidelines and the white lines. I'd like to do the white. No, wait, they're doing the solid yellow and the white.
If they do, it's $2,450 for the double yellow. And if you want the white lines with it, it's another $1,300.
All right, why don't we just do the double yellow?
Right.
We don't need the white lines.
I agree.
My vote is we don't do anything. I don't think we need any lines down there.
With that being said, so we'll call it 2,650 feet. Half of that will potentially still be there after they realign the road.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not a complete waste at that point, but.
I think we should do it.
I guess what we're looking for is, what do you want us to do?
I think we should do it. I think the city is in charge of the roads and bridges and safety, and I think this is a safety thing, and I think we need to do that. And
It's been all stripes for a long time. We could
Yep.
possibly shut the road down. It just doesn't make any sense to put $3,500.
no,
whatever
20,
it is.
24.
24.
And one person gets hurt, and I think it's a mistake,
No,
so.
you can vote on
I know, I'll probably lose, but I always lose.
it. No, you don't.
No, you don't. Oh, no, you don't.
All right, any other questions on this? All right, someone want to make a motion? No one wants to make a motion? I make a motion, we spend $24.50 on the double yellow lines, which will be reused in the future, half of it, so really we're only looking at $1,200. No
All
seconds?
right, I'm with you. It's gotta get done anyway, the other half, so.
You got a second?
We're responsible for safety on the road. If
We are.
keep it up
That's
till
our deal.
April, then that's on us, so.
I believe it's on us, so.
So, I'll say yes.
You'll
I'll
second it?
make a motion, second your motion.
Second it, okay. All right, any other discussion? Remember, it's not on me if something happens. No other discussions? All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, there you go. Let her ride.
I'm just gonna sit here for a couple minutes.
Are ya? Smiling.
The next item was just an update on the design build project
Okay.
and County Road 54. So the only update I had for the design build project, you had a notice in your packet, which basically was a MnDOT update saying, starting next week, expect lane closures.
Yep, saw that.
From 97 North. My understanding is that that is how they're phasing the project. Phase 1, or the focus in 18 will be north of 97, and the focus for 19 would be south of 97, with the bridge kind of overlapping both seasons. So look for some interruptions starting next week for the month of October, if you're going north on 35.
Let the fun begin.
That's really the main update for the design build project itself. County 54, a couple updates. I think we mentioned we had an open house. The county had an open house here last week. Officially, they had 22 attendees sign in. Could have been more people than that, but it felt fairly well attended. And there's a lot of residents and others here for that. We also had our monthly project management or PMT meeting this morning on the project. So an update from them is that they're starting, or will be starting, the right-of-way negotiations and acquisition. They're likely, depending on weather, will be doing tree removal and clearing and grubbing. They still want to try to let the project in November, advertise it for bids, and still proceeding on a 2018 schedule to get it all done. We're still working with them on some of the ponding configurations that would create the least impact to the city property, but there's only so many, they still need a certain volume, so we're still working with them on that. Did I miss any items?
No.
So the next item on the agenda for engineering was Pine Street ditch work again. Talked about it a little bit previously, and again, I actually talked with Tom at Race Creek Watershed. He's been nice enough to hang out the whole meeting here from the earlier agenda item. Talked about what can we do. We've met with Lino. Again, there's not a lot of interest. I can't fault them. There's not a lot of issues on their side of the street. So it's not really a regional issue, and we couldn't go to the watershed as a multi-city issue. That being said, there are certain potential funding mechanisms, whether it's talked about inter-community flow relief, which this then wouldn't be. There's also an urban stormwater remediation. Again, this really isn't an urban situation, but there are mechanisms. I don't know the reality of them. Might be a low probability. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if we've exhausted our chances at trying to work with the watershed district or Lino. Jim also had some numbers to look at if you wanted him to continue with the city cleaning out the ditch. One thing we, again, aren't 100% sure of is if we do clean out the ditch, so it looks like some of the nice county ditches that they cleaned out, it will function better. It's hard to quantify. There's probably 2 or 3 feet of water it's holding back up on the easterly properties. Maybe that gets, less than half of that for a certain period of time, unless the ditch is continually maintained. So Jim had some numbers for whether it's contracted out completely or whether Public Works does some of the work.
So what I did was I talked to multiple contractors. Actually, only one contractor gave me a bid. So I had him do two separate bids, and one bid being that they do the whole project, which means they excavate the ditch and they replace culverts and put driveways back to existing conditions as they are right now. And that bid is $19,784. With that being said, I called him and said, what if we do, you guys dig. So you provide the equipment and a guy, and then we haul out all the material, and we buy the material, culverts, gravel for driveways, and re-asphalt the one that's asphalt. So that bid is $6,500 for them to dig. Our portion to buy the materials is roughly $7,000. And then Elizabeth and I talked a little bit, and she thought that I should throw a labor number at that as well, because we are there, and that number's $4,200. So if you add those together, it comes up to, roughly $17,000 and some change. So I guess what we're looking for is what do we really want to do? You guys directed us to kind of come up with a plan, and there's no great plan to fix the problem. So, do we leave it? Do we contract somebody? Do we do part of the work ourselves? I personally don't want to get into digging a half a mile of road with utilities and pipelines and stuff like that. That's more liability than what I want to get into. So.
How about trying to turn it over to the
watershed,
the ditch authority, who happens to be the watershed?
Well, clearly that's an option we can go after.
Pat, is that possible? Never happen?
No.
That'll never happen. Okay, well, let's, all right, well, let's,
right.
Okay, so let's just forget that idea.
And for that money, we can buy a new backhoe for the guys digging with themselves.
But
there's telephone
I
poles.
don't want to dig the half mile around all the pipelines.
And the telephone poles, and if there's an issue undermining around those.
There's lots of stuff there, and it's just, if we pay somebody else, they take that liability. And then we're somewhat in the clear at that point.
What do you guys want to do?
How bad is it? Is it affecting people's livelihood, lives,
Well,
homes?
Depends who you ask.
That's kind of how it started.
I
So
know.
it's pretty high in them ones on the corner. That's where it all started.
I'm concerned
On
that
the east side.
if it doesn't work and you only have 10 inches or 9 inches, 0.8,
0.8, I think, is
Of fall?
0.8 feet, 0.08 feet.
Yeah, of fall.
Oh, yeah. So
Basically zero.
it's really not gonna work. A turtle goes across there and it's gonna stop the water.
But there is that one driveway in the spring though, Dennis, right now, where it seems like the water's down here. I parked on top of it last spring. The water's backed up from the one driveway in particular, and there's a 2 or 3 foot drop.
Yeah,
right
but the
there.
question is though, if we dig the ditch out and it's not effectively getting to the county ditch, all we're gonna do is move the water to the next property owner. And now we're gonna be,
Well, ultimately, it's going to move to the ditch, and there's banks on both sides of the ditch, so I don't know effectively that we would flood anybody out at that point. And the concern, or our thought is if we dig the ditch and it works, okay? I mean, you got 1 inch of fall in a half a mile of road. I mean, it'll go down, but does it go down 6 inches? Does it go down a foot? Does it go down 2 feet? We don't know that number. There's no way to really tell unless you surveyed, 200 acres.
Can't we just put culverts under those driveways, the one in particular, without
Get it to Lino?
Huh?
And get it to Lino?
Well, I
Then it
did
will
go
go-
and look
No,
at that
it's
2
just-
times when this was brought up, and there was that water went right up to that one, and there was nothing on the other side of it, because the culvert was either plugged or
Yes.
it's way at the wrong elevation. I mean, that was huge, it was
And not-
obvious to see that.
And not
Just
too far
just
from
doing that one culvert,
Just
though,
that
is
one
not
culvert.
that's not gonna alleviate the problems, though,
No,
because there's
but I think
enough
it would
highs and
relieve
lows in
some
the
stuff.
ditch that.
Well, for example, the pipeline crossing, the ditch is 2 feet higher than it should be.
Right, so you're not gonna be able to do anything with that. But I'm just saying, where that pipeline crossing is, there's 2 driveways to the, is that the north, Dennis?
One on each side.
Or one on each side? The one I'm talking about is to the north more. That, they're like,
The one all the way to the west before the ditch is
Yes.
high.
Right.
High on one side and low
I'm
on
just
the other.
saying, even if there was culverts replaced in those driveways, it might help. At a
The
minimum.
culverts are definitely an issue, because some of them are pinched off or non-existent or high, but it's also items like the pipeline, or it's just the amount of cattails and sediment.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. But now you gotta get a hold of the pipeline guys, because why dig the ditch out if the pipeline doesn't come down?
Yeah, what was your plan of getting around the pipeline?
Well,
Culvert?
they were just doing some work out there, so Dennis told me maybe you should stop down there. There appears to be enough cover over those that we could dig down and excavate to the number that we need to get to. So, I mean, whether they're ultimately willing to let us do that, I don't know if they have a minimum cover or not at this point, but I mean, that would be something that we would have to go over.
I think it's opened up a can of worms.
That's the Williams Brothers line, isn't it?
That's a coke pipeline.
A coke pipeline?
What do you guys think?
Well, also though, isn't the culvert under a private driveway, that's the owner's responsibility, correct? It's not a public road, it's a driveway.
Mr. Griffith, isn't it in ours? I know it's in the county thing, because I'm on a county road, that I'll maintain a culvert at the right level. Don't we have the same thing?
Yes,
So we could-
the culvert's there because you have a ditch there. I mean, they could, without a ditch, they could drive into their property without needing a culvert. On the other hand, I think you've had a policy that the property owners participate in the culvert replacement. I seem to recall that, but I don't think that's true.
Well, they maintain, you know what I mean, it's also a policy that they maintain the driveway ditch, or a culvert rather, because otherwise we would have to, we need a crew to clean out driveway culverts,
But nobody does it.
but nobody does it, so I think.
It's the difference if we didn't do it or they don't do it.
When you look at the amount of money, I mean, it's, at the end of the day, whether it's $13,000 or $20,000, this is only one ditch. We have 52 miles of roads here. You know, that's 104 miles of road ditch. So, you know what I mean, I don't know how do you decide how much to spend on each road ditch, because there's plenty of road ditches that we clean out.
Jeff, you can say anything?
I think we're opening a big can of worms if we do it.
Bill?
There's a lot of ditches.
Yay.
Something we did
Well, I mean, that one
caused
way,
a problem.
one way to look at that is when you do the ditches wherever the concern is, or the demand, I guess, I don't know. But I can't agree with Jeff, I think we're opening up a can.
Guys wanna fix it or not?
I'd like to see that culvert fixed. I was down there too, and it was backing up a lot of water. I think it would relieve a little bit of a pressure. And that, as far as I'm concerned, that's the homeowner's expense to do it.
Who, you know who it is?
Hmm?
Do you know who it is?
Oh,
It's the one to the west just before Rabines, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, to
Yes.
the east of Rabines? East of Rabines.
East of Rabines.
Yeah,
That
you
one
could
there.
park right on top of that driveway last spring, and there was
It's not the
nothing.
Lawsons, is it?
Dry on the west side and all super wet on the water is almost up to the road on the east side.
Right,
So that culvert needs to be replaced, so.
and then it backed up over the top of the pipeline.
So if we're gonna do anything down the road, I would like maybe just try an experiment with that one, maybe, I don't know.
I think with an inch of fall from one end to the other,
I don't think that's,
Any turtle in the middle is gonna, as the mayor said, is gonna not help us out any.
Mayor say that?
I did.
Here's a visual that might help a
That's a
little bit.
big
We had done a survey out there at one time. So here's the county ditch. And here's the first driveway.
That's the one I'm talking about, right,
So if
Dennis?
you look at the profile, there's this culvert, and the ditch is nice and low on the west side. And then on the east side, it's at least a foot higher than it should be. You have to excavate that out. And then this little, you wanna call that a hump, that's the pipeline crossing. Then the ditch gets back down to a reasonable level till you get to the next driveway. Which put the culvert in too high, and you'd have to dig about 200 or 300 feet out to get rid of that high point on both sides. And that's the western quarter mile.
And if you keep going east, Dennis, and I just asked a question, when you say they put the, so normally that's when a home site's built, the contractor puts the culvert in, is that how it works?
I believe so.
Yes. And generally what they do at that point is they put it at the bottom of the ditch. So if house A gets put in, when the road gets put in, that's the established ditch. If house B gets put in 5 years later and the road's gravel, there's 5 years worth of stuff.
We put this culvert in to match the existing ditch bottom, which is higher than it.
They're not gonna excavate for 200 feet.
Because we don't know what the original ditch line was at that point either.
So going east from there, it's not too bad, the ditch, you can see my salvage line is pretty close to the dotted line, and the little bumps and stuff, that need to be excavated out. It's hard to tell because each solid line here that's 10 feet, so that amount like between the solid line there, that's actually a foot of material that needs to come out at a minimum, or, 300, 400, 500 feet. And there's a driveway there, but if there's no culvert, you can find the culvert when you get surveyed. And then it gets up to the Zodiac. So there are some stretches that would need to be excavated regardless.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think maybe a year ago or longer, the question was raised, could this be assessed? We didn't go very far with that, but the question may be if you want some sort of property owner, the property owners are asking you to do this, call it improvement. As you saw with the watershed district, they have a funding ratio, public versus landowners. So I don't know if
I liked their city part, 3%, that was good.
Either that or do we do it part of our road project? So when we do a road project, do we evaluate the road ditch? And then do you do it as part of the shape and pave project and do you look at the ditch work if we're gonna do all these blacktop projects?
Just wanted to throw that visual up there, that's 50 years ago. So it was all farmed on the north side, and the ditches are nice and clean and established, and the road ditch is actually kind of dark, it's probably holding water, and there was a couple private ditches. And over time, this farming's gone away, and obviously it's grown up. It's all graded.
Where's Jardell on there?
Pointer? Where's what?
Jardell Street, what would it be about?
That's like way over here.
Way over there? Okay.
The county ditch is right here.
This right here, I believe, would be Willie Davis's, and then this here would be Zodiac Street.
Come right in here. And then over in section
Dennis, is this ditch still here?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, does water come from here into there and flow out, or does it go from here up? Nobody
Don't know.
knows.
that area with, minor.
Depends which way the wind's blowing.
Depends on who you ask.
The moon, tide.
That's a big part of it. I mean, if it's supposed to go north and this is plugged, then you can see where everything's backing up.
I know those watersheds looked at it in the past too, and depending on the elevations are so flat, one thought is that the water used to come up this way and around, and then it was down the ditch. It's hard to tell.
When was this taken? You
This
said?
was 1965.
Oh. Well, there's big floods that year, so that's obviously was a wet year.
Oh yeah, that was the big one, wasn't it?
Yeah, huge flood, 65.
Actually, the wetter year was,
67, 9?
75 and 79 too, but 65 is a big one.
I don't have it with me, but, previous to, like 1940s.
Okay, so what do you guys want to do?
There ain't much we can do, because if we dug it out, it wouldn't be, what good would it do? We're just wasting time and money.
Well, unless we force the culverts to be lowered on the,
I mean, with the drop in the flow we got, it isn't gonna, the water isn't gonna flow anyway.
what would it cost to lower those culverts? Be pretty expensive, wouldn't it? Are those blacktop aprons? On the
Well,
ones?
I think one is.
I mean, as part of, if we did the option B, I mean, I figure that's $7,000 worth of pipes and aprons and materials to fill it back.
Oh.
What if we start with one, see if that did anything? I don't know.
Well, what we'd have to do is we'd have to force
See if we
it.
get a cost share with the owner of the property maybe, and
Bill, would be, our policy would be to force the homeowner to do it, wouldn't it?
I think you could, with a little bit of review, I want to make sure that I'm not just speaking out of turn, but I think you could either A, like you do with developers, have a cost share by, almost like by a development agreement or improvement agreement, or you could come up with a special assessment like the watershed does. So those would be two options. If somebody says, hey, I'll participate in 50% if you lower my culvert and clean it out and clean the ditch on either side as far as you need, you could work out an agreement with them. That would be kind of a one-off agreement. Or you could do a special assessment for the whole project. But then you'd have you'd follow your same process and have a neighborhood meeting and see how many people are interested in that.
You guys wanna do that, or you wanna just do nothing? Jeff, say something.
I don't know. I'm gonna say, you're gonna open it up, you're gonna possibly, how many projects there are around it need ditch changing and culverts and a lot of area. It's not just one we're talking about lots of them.
Then we start talking about direct assessments and indirect assessments,
I
and
know.
now you gotta figure out where the water's really coming from, and it's really not our deal, right?
Do a feasibility study.
I think that, again, with a little bit of review, I think the next time they come in a wet spring or whatever, you could say, okay, fill out a petition, and go see if your neighbors are interested in this project.
So basically turn it into a project, like a paving project.
Yep. So walk it around and then you can decide, we'll cost share at 25% or 50% or whatever you think is reasonable.
I think that's a good idea.
Sounds like-
Get the neighbors together. They're the ones that petitioned or complained about it. And let that whole stretch there that needs to be fixed, let them come in. Maybe they all wanna do it. I mean, one guy's driveway culvert's all jammed up anyways, or a couple of them are. Get them together.
All right, so at that point, then do you go the whole mile?
Well,
I mean, where do you quit?
well, you quit at
I mean,
when the
we're
people
only
quit
doing the
paying.
affected area from one road to the county ditch. You could go the other side of that then too.
Well, that
Maybe
is
they
the
want to.
main-
Cause it sounds like, listening to the Rice Creek people, sounds like the water gets there, she's gone. So, doesn't sound like that's the problem.
Not that I'm trying to make more work for anybody, but
How many property owners have actually complained?
Well, one for
how
sure.
many?
Yeah, is it just one?
One.
And you have 4 or 5 along that?
I mean, I did talk to other property owners that haven't complained about it, but clearly have lost frontage.
Right.
A lot of frontage.
Well, we seen what Rice Creek shed with the water table's gone down levels, water's going out. Maybe all these neighbors get together and they decide they wanna do it.
So, can we do a city, I suppose, I think we do that, we just let the neighbor, we'll let the neighbor who complained know that that's his process at this point. Elizabeth, is that something you could send him a letter on? Unless you want us to make a motion to that effect?
We can send a letter. I think this property owner is, I don't know whether he'll be receptive or not.
Well,
I
it
don't know where
won't
he's
be.
gonna go.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
We'll just do the work on the retainer file, no additional charges, but.
Oh, I like that.
The reason I'm saying that is before the letter goes out, I want to make sure that there isn't something about ditch law that changes the assessment process.
Okay.
It's not something we use
All
every
right.
day.
It's not a ditch, it's a road ditch. So
Oh, it's
not-
a road ditch,
It's
okay.
not it's not a ditch that's like a public ditch or a private ditch. This
Okay,
is the
so-
road ditch.
Okay, if that's the distinction, then I'm pretty sure we can follow the Chapter 429 process. I just want to confirm that, and if so, we can say the property owner, it was discussed, if you want to bring a petition in for an improvement.
Same thing if we were trying to fix the slopes on a road.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so you'll do that?
Good
All right,
idea.
here we go.
All right.
What else you got?
That's it.
I'm sure we'll be back to this, so don't throw your papers away. All right. All right, let's go to, let's do the levy after with the attorney's report. Attorney's report.
Nothing further?
Okay. Council report?
Nothing to report.
Nothing today.
Nothing.
Bill?
I'm good.
Okay, so let's talk about the levy. You have the handout?
I do, I think if we do the other things and they do the budget last, it'll be easier.
That's what we're doing. This is last.
But, so I'll do my report first and then I'll do the budget.
Okay.
So, two things. I did receive the letter from Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, addressed to, the city or they're addressed to the applicant, but it's notifying the city that there was a denial plus the 18 pages of findings. So whoever wants a copy of that,
Which one?
this is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agent for the.
Oh, I got one
Yeah, they
mailed to
sent
my
it to one of
house.
us.
Oh, did they send each one of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that, so everyone got one then. All right. The second
So
thing
does
is,
the newspaper lady knows that there was a denial for the study, for the asphalt plant.
for the citizens petition.
Pollution
You can
control
have it,
study.
yeah. Yes.
Yes.
So again, it was for the EQB board sent a letter saying that there was an evaluation made by Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and that they denied the need for an EAW for the asphalt plant petition. So, okay, that was the first thing. Second thing is, Julie Eddington contacted me this week, and there are several opportunities for conduit bonding. There are several communities that have exhausted their bonding or bank qualified bonding, and they'd like to help other entities, you know what I mean?
For
have
this
some
year or
construction
next
for this
year?
No, this is this year, so it would have to
Oh.
be issued prior to December 2017.
We haven't bonded? We bonded for a bunch of stuff, though.
We didn't bond for anything.
We didn't?
No.
So because we haven't bonded for anything, our community is eligible to do this. And so we wanted to know if the council was interested in doing conduit bonding. Again, it would have to be issued prior to December 31st of this year. And if you were interested in, then she's going to put us on the short list, and if something comes up, because now we have to get through it pretty quickly because we're almost to the end of the year.
I would be, you guys?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Definitely.
Okay,
So,
go for it.
I think we should up the ante, and I think we should charge $75,000 for the issue.
There you go.
So, that would be the asking price.
Times are good.
That's 1 year, 2 years of inflation.
It was 50 last time, wasn't it?
It was. So, again, we would
Well,
take
didn't we-
anywhere from 50 to 75,000.
Did we do it twice for 50?
Yeah,
Yep.
Does she think that'll fly?
yes.
Oh, nice.
Okay, now we can, get to budget. I think we should.
I didn't see that.
It was A2, page A2.
A2.
I saw, I read it briefly, he's complaining about trucks on Camp 3 Road.
Bill?
Oh, you want me to wait?
No, no.
No.
Hi, Bill.
Good night,
Hi.
Bill.
Good night.
Just want the acknowledgement that you're leaving and
What did you do, just turn off the clock?
So it was on the flip side of the memo that Bill did for the process. And so Glenn indicated that he saw that we evaluated the speed on Camp 3 going from Kettle River to Potomac, and after he read those minutes, he said, he came to the city hall and said that he felt there was a lot of heavy truck traffic on the short portion of Camp 3 from Kettle River to Lake Drive. And I'm gonna turn this over to Jim because he told me the difference between a haul route and a truck route. And from the gist of the request is, he wants to make a suggestion to have signage on the road to make to make it off limits to heavy trucks, or limit it to 5 tons or less.
You wanna read it? Cause I haven't read it, so I'm only going off of hearsay, so.
I can read it.
Okay.
So it says, "Dear Mayor and Council, I'd like to bring the heavy truck traffic to the attention of this Columbus City Council. Each year it seems to be getting worse with large dump trucks, side dumps, tanker trucks, low boys with heavy construction equipment, almost every type of truck except the cement trucks which use Kettle River Boulevard. They use it as a shortcut to Kettle River Boulevard instead of going a little further to the intersection of Lake Drive and Kettle River, which are both heavy-duty, wide county roads capable of handling these heavy trucks. Camp 3 is a standard, narrow residential street. This is definitely a hazard to cars and small vehicles trying to use this road. Also, Anoka County recently repaired a dip at the east end of Camp 3 at Lake Drive, most likely caused by these heavy trucks. Let's not wait for further deterioration of Camp 3 Road and expensive repairs for Columbus. I'm making the suggestion to our city council to have signage on this road to make this off limits to heavy trucks or limit of 5 tons or less. All other heavy trucks can use the intersection at Lake Drive and Kettle River Boulevard. Thanks for your attention to this problem.
Okay, what we talked about as staff today was a no-haul route, but a haul route is different than truck traffic.
Right.
So I guess what he's asking for is truck traffic, not haul route. Because in a haul route, I mean, you can drive a truck on a haul, you can drive a single truck on a haul route, but you can't use multiple truck traffic on a haul route like faster 2-lane.
Well, you can't even make a right turn off of Lake Drive on a Kettle River, can you? If you're going south on Lake Drive and make a right to come back to Kettle River?
Yeah.
With a truck?
It's a tight, it's a tight
I
turn.
think it'd be awful tight.
Yeah, I'd rather not do it, but.
I don't think you could.
I talked to Doug Fisher about that a while back because the angle that Camp 3 hits, Kettle River at.
River hits 23?
At a funny angle, just enough angle so your side post is in the way of seeing traffic. When I come up to that corner, I usually turn at an angle so I'm perpendicular.
Most people just angle across so they can shoot straight out, but right.
Yeah, so Doug's idea is he actually wants to put in a roundabout there that closes Camp 3 and connects basically a roundabout for the 2 county roads to come together there in the future. So I think in the future it'll be taken care of. I don't think we should do, I think if we go 5 tons, the standard 26,000 pound truck, single axle, can't go down that, which I think would be a problem. So I think it should, I think we should leave it alone. I don't think we should change it.
I drive that 2, 4, 6, 8 times a day. I've never seen a big truck on that road yet. I mean, I'm sure he has because he lives there, but I think you're gonna leave it.
I think so, but, I mean, if we limit it, we limit it. I don't know, how would you do just semis, Dennis? I mean, because we get quad axle dump trucks, which 50, 60,000 pound truck. I think that we wait for the bigger picture to change that. If we do anything there, I'd like to fix the approach, not necessarily the tonnage.
Which at that point is a county.
Which is a county issue. Well, it's a county and a city thing. Because our Camp 3 is, he would like to not have that. Doug would like to not have the Camp 3 come out on a curve. Camp 3 comes out on a curve on a county road 55 miles an hour.
Right.
And that,
better off not even having that road there.
it's better off not having it there. So I'm sure someday that road's going away before it gets out of hand. And it'll be a roundabout and they'll be buying some of Glenn's property to put the roundabout in, the corner there, so. What do you guys think? Okay, Danny?
I agree with you.
Okay, so we'll respond to them that there'll be some changes there in the future, and for now, we're gonna leave it alone.
So you did get one.
Jesus.
Okay.
All right. All right. All right, anything else?
So looking at, no, nothing else on my list other than the budget. So what you have before you is the 2017 levy, 2018 budget. I'm gonna go over the summary and then I'll go into the detail of the budget. I won't take too much time because I don't think there's a whole lot of issues. But so looking at the first sheet, the first page, which is the budget summary, we're going to look at the 2018 levy because right now we're just concentrating on the levy. We don't adopt the budget until December. And so I want you to look all the way over to the right to this percent of change. So looking at the general fund levy subtotal, I understand that 8.5% looks like a large number, and we'll certainly look at the detail, and you can look at the individual numbers, but when you look at the general levy and the general obligation bonds, the difference is $184,266 because I actually converted the percentages into dollar figures so that you knew what we were looking at. I did ask our financial people to look at, because of our increase in tax capacity, how much dollars we would have as a result of growth, that there would be not a tax impact to everyone, and roughly it was $120,000, and that would have kept the tax rate flat. I wasn't able to do that, so right now the difference is about $60,000 over, and we can talk about the details. Currently, the tax rate for Columbus for 2017 is 50.41%. So looking at the increase the new tax rate would be 51.61%. And again, it would be in dollars, that's a 2.4 increase in dollars. But again, looking at overall numbers, we can now go into the budget detail, and I can show you where that $184,000 is in the budget.
Well,
So looking at, we'll go through the disbursements because the revenues there isn't a whole lot of change in revenues. So we'll look at the bottom line, and at our last budget meeting in general government, so this is a difference from last year to this year. It's $52,259,000 currently, and that primarily was for IT services. So we had an increase in software with the scanning and services, and so that's where the increase was in there. The second section, it was a small increase. It was $478,000 to $492,000, and that was there was a small increase in administrative wages, and then primarily in professional services and comp plan. So I just increased those appropriately compared to what we have our cost for actual in 2015, 16, and 17. So if you look under the comp plan, there was $5,000 increase there, because if you look in the past, we did $12,000, $21,000, and $37,000, and we only budgeted $10,000. So we've been doing a fair amount of ordinance work, and the comp plan alone will be $25,000. The grant we received is only $10,000. So primarily, those are the increases there. If we go on to the second page, unless there's questions on the first page. The increase here was, there's a $2,500 increase in grounds maintenance. We seem to have some issues in our parking lot and sidewalks and maintenance that we need to attend to and put some money towards, and really didn't have a place in the budget. So in the repairs maintenance, I added grounds maintenance and $2,500 to that line item, which accounts for the increase in in that section. The only thing I did for the senior center is they pay $3,600 in rent, and I just equated the $3,600 and made the expenses equate to that. The building inspection was on, which is on the third page. Building inspection is the revenues in are equal to revenues out, so there, I made no changes. But if you look historically for 14, 15, and 16, for the actual dollars coming in that department, it's been pretty steady. So if you look at it, $70,000, it was $67,000 and then $70,000. So I think we're tracking this year for about $80,000 or $85,000. So we're looking to see a little bit of increase in that department, and consequently, we're increasing the hours worked. Contract services is the same along with capital outlay. And the cable franchise, I think I added $1,000 to it because looking at the trend, I thought the trend would be going down, but it isn't. It looks like it's going up, so I was a little surprised in that. But maybe more for internet service that they're packaging, so maybe you have to bundle it, and maybe that's the reason why we're seeing a little bit increase in cable TV. Questions about the general fund? Because that covers general fund, and then we go into public works, which is the 120 fund.
Sounds like there's no questions.
Okay, so looking at public works, there was a minor increase in the public works for medical insurance. So that was, I think it was $1,000. In the shop expense, there was a $5,000 increase in repairs and maintenance. It appears that we're having more expenses in repairing our equipment, so Jim wanted to increase that by $5,000. In the last section, we increased, and it was in the culvert ditch work ponds section. We talked about this last meeting where we're taking on stormwater ponds, and we added $2,500 in order to take care of and maintain the stormwater ponds.
Okay.
The capital fund we talked about before, and they increased it by $10,000 roughly plus an escalator. The blacktop gravel fund we talked about the increase. I don't remember the exact number of the increase, but we talked about the formula that they used. The transportation fund, there is no change. Looking at the next page, which is page 6, I think this is where we're going to see some questions come up. So the police fund, I think we all realized that there was going to be an increase, so it does reflect the $60,000 increase there. But then we come to the fire department, and I did get the numbers of the budget that the Forest Lake passed, and I think for the operating budget, there really weren't any big changes. I think where the changes came in was Forest Lake decided to create a capital fund, and the capital fund number that they're putting together and our proportionate share for the 5-year plan is $46,080. And that will then allow us to pay cash for the equipment, you know what I mean, that we need in the future. Well, we didn't really have a line item for that. And so I created the line item, and so here's where the choice is. So what is the number that's in that line item? The next line item is the debt service for, and I can't remember what piece of equipment it is, but that bond is paid off this year or next year. So that levy dollar amount can be attributed for next year, you know what I mean, if we don't change it. So I made up the difference, and so that's why it's 23,000, I think 580 on yours. Mine I just have it crossed out, but I'm pretty sure that's 23,580 for this year, and then if we move the 22,000 into the reserve, that'll make $46,080 for the following 4 years. The only other way to do that is to put $46,080 or another number, or we'll have to bond for the equipment when Forest Lake's paying cash.
So in the future, are we gonna bond like this, or do we gonna start putting a little bit away for?
No,
I
that's,
guess I only
that's,
had one meeting with the fire board, so I'm still a little new at this, but are we gonna start putting a little bit away for future truck purchases, or are we gonna wait till they gotta buy a big hunk of equipment and we're gonna levy for it again?
no, we're gonna, this is our rated 22.5% or whatever of what they wanna do in their plan to keep us above
Right, but it's
water.
still 46 grand, right, correct?
Well,
That's
no,
our share.
yeah, but
Our
that's our
share.
share, but we would have been spending, money anyways. How much would we have spent?
No, that was our share, I remember that, I mean, our share of what your purchases, but I'm saying for future purchases of that, are we gonna start putting something away for that, or are we gonna get
That's
50
what the
grand here, 70 grand here, 50 grand
Oh, I see
here?
what you're saying. No, I took, they had a 5-year plan. I added up the 5-year plan that, you know, because they were putting money away. I added up all of the, and then I averaged it out. So 5 years times $46,080 is our 20% share.
So we'll start putting away 46,000 every year, or something similar thereof, so we're not falling behind on it.
Right, if we put it together, then we'll be able to buy the equipment. Now, the equipment is, you know what I mean, in all different years, but and they're putting the 80%, the other 80% to buy the equipment away, because they don't want to bond anymore. They don't want to do equipment certificates.
Right, and I agree, so I think it's time to do that.
So I wasn't sure what you wanted to put in here. 23,580, and then be short 22,000 next year, and then put the 22,000.
You have it both in here right now.
Well, we still have to pay the bond. There's one more year on the bond for the fire truck, the 2008 equipment certificate. So yeah, I didn't put the $46,080 in there because I really didn't know what you wanted to do. But next year, that 22,500 becomes available to put towards that fund.
I got it.
So we don't have to come up with that full 46 this year for the fire department?
No, you do.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna
You
say,
do.
we'll be short, if we don't come up with the 46,000, when they go to buy the truck and whatever year they're gonna buy it, we're gonna be short.
I'd say you gotta put it in there.
Yeah.
Jeff?
What do they wanna buy?
I don't know. Stuff, I mean, they have a whole schedule.
Well, 22.5 is getting off the books next year. You say we don't have 22.5 on the books next year, that truck is paid for?
Right. But they have other trucks they wanna replace, the
know
engines,
they do.
the pumper one, and
They don't have many miles. You guys better, fire board, might have to hold the line a little bit on that. They wanna replace both engines? They're both the same year, cause they got a plastic water tank that doesn't hold water? I don't know.
they were leaving icicles on the road.
So back to that, are we gonna start a new fund so we can put money in that every year so we're not caught off guard is what I'm.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to get
just,
at.
exactly.
Yeah, that's what I put. I put fire reserve. I just renamed it and put fire reserve in here. And that would be, and then we would have a schedule, just like
Okay.
the blacktop fund. And we would put money away and we would mirror their
So-
capital fund with the equipment.
In 2018, we're gonna need 46,000, and we'll still have to pay the 22.5.
For 1 year.
Theoretically, yes,
So-
but I didn't know if you wanted it, see, I wasn't sure where you wanted to go with the budget right now, because right now, there's a 2.3 net increase to everyone, and if you do that, it'll be more than that, it'll be more than that, so.
Well, it's gotta come from somewhere if we're gonna do that.
I agree with you, I just,
She wants to know how much.
The 46,080, I mean, what else can you do?
You wanna go the whole,
We have to. Otherwise we'll have to bond for it, or it's gotta come from somewhere. Or we just tell them, whenever they decide to buy something, we'll have to go do a bond. It would cost us $50,000 to lose our bonding. Right, we just sold it for $75,000,
We'll have to levy for it, because we can't bond, because then we'll lose here, like you're saying.
our capacity.
Yeah.
I'd say we're
7581 coming up.
so actually what you're saying is we're buying the April.
We're
Should've
buying,
been paid.
yes, we're behind the 8 ball. It should have been just like our public works, where we don't have to bond, we just assess and it just goes.
And we'll be on that in the future, but this year we're
Do
caught.
you know what
off
they're
guard on
saying
it.
they need next for engines or trucks or?
They need a fire inspector.
That's in the 133, or the one, yeah, the,
That's all zero there, right?
I didn't take it out, it's in the 133.
Okay, just, I think we take that out.
So why isn't the engines, they can't have mentioned?
133, where is that one?
They don't.
I think
Why can't they
it's,
put the
they put 56,000, 56,000. Hold on, should we pull the
They're
numbers?
not shiny enough.
I say we,
I didn't see
I
the
say we
number.
pull out the inspector thing and put in the 46,000.
Well, I won't disagree with that.
Because I don't want an inspector.
Well, the other thing is why, somebody needs to ask the question, if the engines don't have that many miles on them, they're stored inside in primo conditions, why can't they fix the tanks? Why buy new engines if they're low mileage?
They can't fix the tanks.
Well, then why do they have to get shiny new trucks?
I'm not sure if it's all about those engines. It's about,
They said
They have a
a pumper
sketch.
truck in 2019, 550,000.
Jeez. And what's wrong with the one now?
Is that the one that has the lakes?
well, there's,
That's an engine. Oh, I don't,
I guess I'm not sure then.
That's a lot of dough. How many times a year do they go out?
each time is as important as the next.
Well, I know that.
Why don't they fix the leak though?
what's that?
I guess I didn't know, I gotta ask more questions in the next meeting, but my God, you can do a lot of welding for that kind of money.
It's plastic. You can weld it too. You can
How
weld
much for a new
plastic.
tank on it then?
You gotta tear the truck apart to put the tank in. What were you looking for, Elizabeth?
I've got my calculator. See what they did. I took all of our numbers, I added them together, and I, you know what I mean, divided by 5, because this is too hard for us to do. You know what I mean? For
Well,
they
what are we
did.
gonna do for the steps then?
And so that's how I got 46,000. Do you know what I mean?
But that still doesn't, 246 is done, doesn't equal that one.
I know, and we'll have to
Then
borrow to
separate.
pay Sam, but then we, you know what I mean, we'll
Yeah,
have the money.
I see what you're
But
doing there.
this is what they did. I mean, this is what they ended up doing. Do you know what I mean, for,
Yeah, so I say, well, that 56 isn't all on us, only 20% of that would be us.
right. So what they did is they added it up, and then they said, estimated Columbus,
Oh,
162,000.
so that number has the inspector in it.
Yeah, that's what I said. It has a
shouldn't.
number, it has a
Separate
number already
deal.
in it. That's what, I'm gonna have to do some math.
Yeah, that's why they did it that way, to keep it,
You're talking the fire inspector?
yeah, they threw
I
it in
thought
the
we-
capitalization thing.
Where is
That
he?
doesn't belong there.
I thought we didn't approve that yet.
We didn't.
Then why is it in
Do we
there?
need Dennis here? Dennis, you wanna go?
No, this isn't the public works budget.
Public Works, we'll take care of him.
You're down the bridge.
So the fire number,
I can go.
Where's the inspector?
Yeah.
Where do you see that on there?
Inspector here is 0 on this sheet though, isn't it?
Yeah, and this
Fire
one is.
inspection?
I didn't break it out. So the 133,415 includes the fire inspector. So fire, the entire budget is 610,960, and when you multiply that times 20%, it's 122 and rounding $200 dollars. So, and the fire inspector was 56,110, and if you take 20% of that, that would be our proportionate share.
Isn't it 22 and a half or something, technically?
Yeah, they're saying 20%, but yeah, it's 21.2. I mean, just it fluctuates.
I don't understand how they ran routed that through.
Why do
They
we need
didn't.
fire
They
inspector?
didn't yet.
Because I get inspected by insurance.
We don't
company
need
three-
one, and we're not
I get
getting one.
inspected 3 times this year from my insurance company for the same thing a fire inspector would do.
Did you pass all 3 times?
No. That's the trouble.
You're working on it.
We don't.
I
You're
know.
right. So,
So for the fire inspector, it was $11,222 was our proportionate share. If we,
so we don't need to allocate for that, because we'll just say no. So you could take your 46 minus the 11 and do 36, 35, right? But still, that doesn't cover us for that second year, which is 104.
you know, I'm gonna rob part of, you know what I mean, eventually we're gonna have the money, but I didn't think we would be able to.
At least we'd be closer.
I didn't think we would be able to do that.
I think we have too many increases this year. We got the police went up, what, 60,000?
Yep, $69,000.
We got JW over there asking for additional,
We could sell his grader.
yeah, he wants more money.
Could get him a four-wheeler, he could just grade the roads with that.
You got that old pull-behind grader they still have.
Go Cub Cadet.
Yeah, they put one in the Cub Cadet. They look good. Columbus
Still
is.
got that thing?
It is, Jeff, but I mean, what are we gonna do? We have
Well, maybe we
to,
can
I'd say,
put additional 43,000 whatever for the fire equipment, do half now and pick it up next year, after the 18th.
no, we'll have enough for, 46,000 will be too much for 2018, but it'll be way short for 2019.
Oh, yeah.
Like hundreds, thousand short.
It's not, you know what I mean? Yeah, we're yeah.
So,
We need some time.
So out of the 133, do you want me to reduce it to the 122, 200?
I think so, because I'm not voting for it, you're
So
voting
you're
for it.
deducting the fire inspector.
The inspector, right.
Yeah.
That needs to get pulled out of there.
Okay, so then that new number then is 122, 500.
Okay,
I'm rounding, because
Yep.
odd numbers don't work for me in the budget. And
Okay.
then for the capital match, or the capital,
which is your fire reserve,
right,
that needs to go up to 46,000 minus the 11,000. So I'd say that make that one the 36, 35 or whatever. Make a number, 36,000.
okay.
See what we're saying? We need. What was that first year? 10,000 for next year.
First year is 35,000, second year is 550,000.
Right. So
But you take 20% of that, so first year is 7,000, but I need 102,000. The
second year.
the second year, which is 20.
So 40. So 30. Well, basically, it's going to be 46 and 46. No, I take it back.
20% on there.
I take it back.
20% of that 550?
Yeah, it's 21, 22. But if you leave the 133, leave that at 122,500, but then put 46,000 in instead of 23,500.
Okay.
That gets you that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah,
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
So it goes up. It only goes up by 36,000 net. See that? Okay. You guys good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on.
Okay, there's no changes in the fire hall fund, nor in the capital fund. I just wanna remind everybody that the fire hall was built in 1998. We've never, done too much with the roof. So I think we might have some maintenance coming up, because now it's.
Isn't it capitalized? It's usually the roofs go for 25, 30 years. So it's not next year, but it's coming.
Yep.
So we should start capitalizing that if we can. Not this year, though.
Last year we put 7,500 in. We went from 1,000 to 7,500, so we're building up a fund. I think a
Okay.
flat roof is about $20,000 or so to replace.
It's all of that, I think.
All of that and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I replaced the flat roof in a little old shop, and it was $10,000 for that. And that ain't one half of the size, it's one
Yeah.
third the size.
Well, I don't know what kind you use, but they got that PVC now,
It's a
unballasted.
new membrane.
Unballasted white PVC.
Yeah, that's what.
That's the way to
And
go.
there's a signage too.
Signage?
On the front of it.
Oh, that needs to be fixed, but let's not do
It's all
that tonight.
Let's discuss that tonight.
Let's, Bill, if you don't mind.
So right now it's at 7,500 for, putting money away for capital repairs for the fire hall.
Okay.
The park fund, the park board didn't recommend any increases, so that, stayed the same for the fund and the capital fund. There is no funding for charitable gambling. Sunrise, there was an increase, we approved their budget, and so there's, last year it was 7,500, this year it'll be 10,150. because it's the levy plus $1,500 of local inspections, dollars for local inspections. The last three are bond payments, for our debt, for the debt service. And then you have the two business funds, on the last two pages, which, we don't levy for, we just budget for, because we have, public utility billing. And then the last page is the, Economic Development Authority Operations Fund, which we did not change from last year to this year.
So back to the Sunrise watershed money.
Yes.
What, we're not getting, the taxpayers of Columbus are getting nothing for that.
Because we don't have anybody on the board to represent us.
That has nothing to do with it. We even if we were there, we're not getting nothing.
They just raised it and we had nobody there to say no.
We kept the budget levy, even for the 2-3 years that I was, 4 years I was on it, pretty close to being level, even. Now we're not there, they're pushing it through.
Maybe that was their plan.
Could have been.
I'm just saying why, I mean, there's no, there really is no benefit. I mean,
Can they
unless you
force
tell
us to
me
levy
different,
for it?
Danny. I mean, I was only
Yeah, you already approved their budget.
Yeah,
So
but
Bill, it's a moot point.
we can't walk away from it, we can't get off in it. There's no way we can get off that, out of there.
Why not?
Because it's a government entity, government wants us to be on there, and we gotta be there, basically, that's what it goes. We cannot say we don't wanna contribute anymore.
But but even when you were there, Danny, I mean, you were there all the time, and I'm just asking the question because I was only doing, what, 3 meetings total? It's always about everybody up north. I mean, there was never any plans to do anything for Columbus. Maybe I'm wrong because of Coon Lake.
There's a little bit done on Coon Lake, and that's basically what, the ditches they can't do because, they can't, we can't afford to do the ditches, because county won't do the ditches.
But I mean, most of the conversation when I was in those was
Carp traps, yeah.
carp traps for Typo Lake and all that other.
That's all East Bethel stuff, and East Bethel pays a lot bigger money than we do. I'd like to just say flush it and walk away from it, but it can't be done.
Actually, I think 360 is the bigger problem here than the big white elephant in the room.
Which one?
The $240,000, 201. Third to the bottom line. That's the
Going
land.
to pay the interest on the
Interest
land?
on the land. Interest on some property that we can put some signs on.
That we did put signs on.
Yeah. It's a lot of money to put those signs, store those signs.
Yeah, so what are you gonna do about it?
I don't know, I mean, understand that will come off when that's all sold.
Right. But it's
So-
240,000 every year.
Every year for nothing.
For
That's
at least how
land.
many years now?
Well,
7?
that's for the land and carrying Green Acres and Senior Heritage deferrals. It's a combination.
Oh, it is? Does that also have any principal in it? A little bit?
Oh, yeah, that's principal and interest.
On what, how many year payback on that thing?
I think that bond issue is 20 years.
20 years.
We really need to get to a capital place. I mean, we really should just self-fund, you know what I mean, try to self-fund things.
We should sell that land. Okay.
You can't just pay that back, you have to wait a
No,
payback date. a
we
certain
can pay
date.
it back.
Like
No.
any loan,
You
you
wait
can
for
pay
a
it
call
off.
date
Yeah,
on a
work for a
bond.
call date.
But
which is
that's-
7 years out?
No, it's
It
every
was.
few years.
Oh, no. There's only one call date on it, I think.
It depends on how many years the bond is, but yeah, there's.
But we just redid it when we changed it from being leveraged off the land to the people, right? So,
Has there been
At least
any
5 years out.
phone calls on any of it lately?
We have, they're all waiting for
For
the
the
bridge
bridge.
to be done. Now they know that the bridge is gonna be done, now that, that there's a lot more phone calls and people, you know what I mean, looking at it.
the sign's working?
I think the signs are working. It definitely generated more interest. Or another look, let's just say.
Should put a picture of our signs in the paper.
I really
Good
think
looking
though,
signs,
that
are good looking
northwest,
signs,
And they look good.
and they look good,
And they look good.
they work.
Yeah.
All right, where we at?
All right, we're on page 9.
Took them guys a long time to get them in, though.
Page 9.
Okay. What do we need to know there, Elizabeth? The water fund is underwater?
Water fund, no, water fund, well, yeah, water fund is, the sewer fund is holding its own, and, you know what I mean, we're building a maintenance, you know what I mean, fund with it. The water is about $675,000 in the negative.
Okay,
So, I'm just gonna tell you what,
that's the one that really bugs me is the telephone one. Pay $1,100 for something that should have been free. If we would've just put fiber in while we built it.
Is that for the automated telephone services for lift stations?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
One line for every one. And when they had the pipes open, all they would have to do was drop some fiber in. Probably cost too much to do now. Okay,
Okay, so I just wanna make sure I got this right. So right now, under fire protection, I made it 122.5.
yep,
And then under fire reserve, I made it $46,080, and that would be the Forest Lake matching their capital.
Yep.
And then the debt service will still be 22.5.
correct, for that last vehicle for one more year.
And, so if, depending on if you have more, you know what I mean, more changes, will determine what, I have a, preliminary levy, resolution that we have to pass, so depending if you have more changes or you wanna make more adjustments, will determine, what the, I'm trying to do the new numbers online, cause I have to turn this in tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, so the water and the sewer have no changes?
No changes in
Okay.
the water and sewer. And the-
240?
And the, I'm sorry?
The EDA is still 91,000?
The EDA is 85,000 and the HRA EDA levy, which is 91,000, which is the resolution we passed at the EDA meeting. And then the council just has to, approve the budget.
Why is there 24,000 in the marketing?
Because we said we were gonna do the signs and we were gonna make marketing materials, which I haven't had a chance to do for the land.
We didn't use this, we didn't spend, how much did you spend on your part? Couple grand?
And then we said we were gonna hire Kathy Anderson to do the other quadrants and do the plan.
But we didn't, we didn't use up that 2017 money? Not all of it?
Right now, we used, $1,725.
So, couldn't have been,
86 grand?
what's that?
You're talking about the ED.
Up here.
The EDA budget.
Are you on page 10?
10. Up to
Yeah, I'm on
10.
10.
Okay.
I was down at the bottom though, sorry.
Yep.
I was looking at the bottom numbers.
So there's 24,000, because it was 4 and 3,000, 4,000, then we bumped it to 24 for last year, or this year. Because we were gonna do all that. I'm wondering if we don't need that 24 in there for next year, do we? I mean, we gotta cut something here.
You know, it's really kind of up to you what you want to do there. The 46,000 I'm using for land expenses, and that's for all the platting and all the things I need to do with, you know what I mean, with land expenses.
Which 46,000?
Sorry?
Which 46?
So if you look, the levy is,
Oh, there, down there, 46,800.
yeah, the budget for the EDA is 85,000, and that's because we said we were gonna use the remainder of what we were allowed to levy for EDA on the land expenses in order to get the land ready for, selling, which was platting and the wetland delineations and all that other things that we need to do.
But we didn't do it, it says 0.
We didn't do it because we didn't have the alignment. Now that we have the alignment, we're gonna now plat it. So, I mean, there's things that now that we have the money, or the,
But would it make sense to put all that in there again?
I know that we still have to do a traffic study, and I know we have to do stormwater, analysis.
And buy a light?
Sorry?
And buy a stoplight.
By a traffic light.
That might be money again, but.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I only have this pot and the transportation pot to do all that with.
So it's really, next year, the property's gonna cost us almost $300,000.
Yeah.
There's gonna be expenses there that I don't know I don't know where else. I don't know that we don't wanna borrow again.
No?
Just 15% of our budget.
So the 75 grand or 50 grand that may come off the bond thing.
Well, that would be would that be a income stream in 2018 or 17?
Say that again?
Any of the bonding we sell, bonding capacity. Would we get that money this year or next year?
Oh, we would have to get it this year.
Which we don't know. We already have that, so we really that's a bird in the bush at this point, right?
That property, these are all these hidden expenses.
Oh yeah,
And we've been paying all along for some of these hidden expenses, haven't we? I mean, this isn't the first year. There's other years.
No.
Yeah, that was a great idea.
No. So
Now we gotta wade through it.
well, there's no out now, but the
What's the percentage, did you say now, or are you waiting for another number?
So, right, I gotta go someplace else.
I don't know, Jeff. What do you think?
I think we should have been at 6 o'clock to discuss this. I think it's too late. Where we at?
So it's probably gonna, right now, when we first started the discussion, it was at 2.39%. The increase to property owners. So you added, I wanna say it was 36.
We added 36,000 or so far.
So it's probably gonna be like 3.5, 3.7, 8, or 8-9%. I don't have this in, on my screen right now, for me to tell you what the tax increase is gonna be.
Is that with the estimated tax capacity growth?
Yeah, it just estimated right now, I won't have
not a real
that until
number.
final levy. And by the way, this is the preliminary levy, we set it now and we can lower, you know what I mean? We can lower it in
Can't
December.
go up.
But the truth and taxation statements go out with the preliminary levy.
Okay, then I say we leave this EDA stuff in there, but I think we need to take a good look at that 24,000 and the 46,800. I think we need to take a good look at that. I mean, what we're really gonna need and what we have left over from this year. Because we didn't spend any of it this year.
If we do conduit bonding, then we probably can do something, you know what I
Right.
mean, like, you know what I mean? You don't wanna lower it and then higher it, you know what I mean?
No, but if the conduit bonding would cover that, get rid of that 46,000, which theoretically should flow over from this year, right? I mean, the money should be somewhere. So at this point, we'll leave page 10 as it is until we get the answers on the conduit bonding.
This is just our preliminary, we can change
Yeah.
it.
So,
But
Elizabeth.
I agree with Jeff, we gotta meet at a different time than 10:30 at
Yeah,
night to
it's
figure this out.
ridiculous after a meeting to go over this thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just a preliminary.
You know what I'm
We can-
saying?
I must be the young buck here.
You are.
56.
I do got one quick question. We didn't spend the 46.8 for the 2017 budget. Where did that money go then?
It's still there.
Then why do we allocate another 46.8 for this coming then? See what I'm saying? Why don't you just let that carry over?
Because we have a whole bunch of stuff we have to do. Like,
We
we
got
got,
20,000 on the
well, I mean.
and the marketing too.
Yeah, well, we save that by me donating all that stuff and JW putting up the sign. So that money, we're gonna need that money as well, because we need this traffic study stuff. We need to stormwater ponding. We need some money to do the
grand picture.
well, that plus, I mean, in 2018 is when people are gonna be coming to us to say, hey, I want this piece, I want that piece, we're gonna have to have our plating done, we're gonna have to have that all done. And if we don't have the money for it, we won't be able to do it. I mean, and selling it is the most important thing the city has right now. Like Bill said, it's over 300.
But we gotta get rid of it. It's up to us. We were left with it.
Yep.
So we just gotta wade through it.
So maybe we can pull some of that out, but I think, you know, if the conduit bonding money is there.
So we can default on it.
Yeah, well, you
No,
know.
we can't anymore.
Okay, anymore?
No, because it's
can't.
backed by the city.
So, but I
residents.
mean, we are gonna run into stuff once that bridge gets done. We're gonna run into more expenses there than we can probably even know. I mean, obviously, the council before us didn't realize that this was gonna be all this expense either.
Okay.
Whether that would've made a difference or not, I don't know. Their decision to do this was for other reasons, you know?
Well, let's keep it in there, and if we need it,
Yep.
we can do that in a minute of time, but we gotta keep it in there.
Okay. General fund?
So the resolution will be, the new number for the general fund is 2,432,697. So the new preliminary levy number is 2,960,502. And then the HRE EDA levy would be 91,000.
Okay, do we have to make a motion to that effect? Is that what you're asking for?
Adopt the resolution. Those are the amended numbers in the resolution.
Okay, someone wanna adopt the resolution?
So moved.
And it's 1727.
Second.
Go ahead.
Give it to Kenny.
I think you had it.
I didn't want it though.
You got it. You got it.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Steve, I need you to stay because I need you to sign.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, you're the young buck, you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, planning commission meeting is next week. Calendar meetings on page 79. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.